Welcome to the Friends of Chabad. There are 5,000 of them around the world, and we're making it a personal mission to be in touch with each and every one. We're going to do episodes that are going to have rabbis, rebbitzins, dancing, mysticism, Kabbalah, family talk, foods, everything you can think of. Today we're going to go to the UK. Follow me. We're going to go to England, the Chabad in the UK, where Rabbi Mendel is sitting to join us. Now, Rabbi Mendel is an author, a lecturer, and he wrote a book on the teachings of the Rebbe. Rabbi, where are you actually sitting in the UK?
I'm comfortably settled just a few streets from Her Majesty's Buckingham Palace. That's where our Chabad Center is, literally on the street of Buckingham Palace.
But you don't sound British.
No, I'm American. You've spotted me. You've got me. But you know what? It's a beautiful thing to be an American. We're, you know, as exotic as a Brit is in the US, an American's warmth and that type of American spirit brings tremendous, tremendous value to this country. So we have a beautiful exchange of cultures and light. There's a powerful American light that the Rebbe would talk about so often. He talked about America being the country of kindness, of compassion, of empathy, and of healing. And I bring that light here to this country, and people really, really resonate with it. So I'm feeling that warmth and light from you guys, both of whom I understand do tremendous work to embody your own personal light and bring that light to the world. John, first of all, huge fan here in London, and I think it's Steve, is that right?
Yes.
Or we call him Shmuel. We call him Shmuel.
My Jewish name. Shmuel.
Rabbi Mendel just brought this book that he inscribed for you, John. It's called Positivity Bias. Yeah. And he'll tell us a bit about it. And that's the inscription that he had given to you.
So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Rabbi Mendel is also kind of an international ambassador, shliach of the Rebbe, because he visits Chabad communities around the world to lecture, and he actually was with us. We talked about our brother Tzemach, and who all of us love and miss so dearly. But Rabbi Mendel came here as a guest lecturer the night of Tzemach's passing. So whenever we think of Tzemach fondly and the last moments that we had with him, of course we think of Mendel. So it's beautiful that you're here with us, because Tzemach is what made all of this happen in a very special way.
And I want to say that the Kunin family are an incredible example of the Rebbe's teaching to transform tragedy into triumph and pain into purpose. I'll never forget the speech Rabbi Kunin gave literally days after he lost his precious son, a gem, a true, unique soul. And what he spoke about is the Rebbe's idea to take anything that appears like a setback and turn it into a springboard for additional light, growth, power, and impact. And that's a powerful teaching embodied by the premise of this book, which is that the Rebbe had a positivity bias. And we would do well to emulate that bias, especially in a time of such turbulence and transience and transition. So that's, in a nutshell, I think, a beautiful real-time example of the Rebbe's teachings transforming real lives in real time, in real ways. Because this book is really like a program or the curriculum for Chabad rabbis and rebbitzins who are always so infused and enthused with positivity. Where do they get it from? I can tell you this, it's not always natural, it's not always personality. Much of it is perspective. Much of it is not just, external factors, but choices made on a daily basis to see the world through a particular lens that frames individuals, ourselves, the world, even history, even those who oppose us, and areas of life that are challenging in positive light.
Wow, that's wonderful. Beautiful. These beautiful brothers of yours said that you were enormously eloquent, and you are.
Oh, thank you. They were exaggerating, but I should say I wish my mom was on this line. That would make it all worthwhile. But let me say this. Most sort of political or spiritual or religious leaders, they're most accessible at the beginning of their career. That's when they know people's names. If you recall that famous Joe the Plumber comment, etc., etc. But as these leaders grow in stature and in their careers, they tend to lose focus on the individual names and people and their lives and tend to devote themselves to the quote unquote bigger picture. What's absolutely astounding in the Rebbe's case is that actually over time he became more rather than less accessible. And one of the amazing examples of that was the dollar experience, where in his early 90s, as you know, he would stand for sometimes 7-8 hours greeting anyone and everyone from any nationality, faith or non-faith background, level of observance, engagement, or otherwise. Imagine that there was no vetting process. That is literally unheard of when you talk about a world leader of any kind. And so that, I think, further emphasizes that to the Rebbe, every individual was a unique world. And everything else was there to support the individual, not the other way around. Such a key teaching. There's a beautiful story of the Rebbe where someone from the UK, a wonderful artist from Iran originally, who left during difficult times, moved to London, and he painted a beautiful portrait of the Rebbe. And when he presented it to the Rebbe told him something beautiful. He said, it looks better than the original. and John, you remind me of that special gift the Rebbe had called Lashon Tov, which means positive, virtuous, empowering language. The Rebbe, there's an entire chapter in the book about that. Every interaction he had, he found a way to uplift and to activate the hidden good within the other. I'll tell you a really beautiful anecdote. Someone shared this with me. The winners of the Israeli beauty pageant, believe it or not, came to see the Rebbe for a blessing on a Sunday. And as the group passed, there was an older woman, probably in her late 80s there. And the Rebbe turns to her and says, are you not part of that group? What a beautiful story. The Rebbe was so attuned to the feelings and to the sensitivities everyone might carry with them.
And we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, and more with Rabbi Mendel from the UK.
I want to share with you a story that lifted me up and lifts me up in difficult times. But first, can I share a joke, guys?
Oh, please,
Yes.
we need one.
Okay. So there's a fellow sleeping in Saturday morning, and his wife comes in and tells him, listen, honey, it's time to go to synagogue. He says, honey, why? I'm sleeping in, let me be. He says, I'll give you 2 reasons I don't want to go to synagogue. Number 1, I'm tired. Number 2, people don't like me at the synagogue. His wife says, and I'll give you 2 reasons you should go to the synagogue. Number 1, that's what we do on Shabbat mornings. Number 2, you're the rabbi.
Very good.
But to the story that inspires me, and I share the joke with you, and by the way, rabbis can say self-deprecating jokes about rabbis, can they not? Here's another one. There was a rabbi who was struggling with his oratory. He didn't feel like he had the best speaking skills. So he goes to a summit of public speakers, and the opening headline speaker gets up and he says the following. He says, the best years of my life were spent in the arms of a woman who was not my wife. The entire crowd gasped. That's a public revelation, a scandal. He says, of course I'm referring to my dear mother. Everyone breathes calmly. The rabbi walks out and he says, I must use that somehow. But he had a struggling memory. Anyhow, he decides Yom Kippur, Kol Nidre, prime time television. Everyone's in the synagogue. He has to utilize this wonderful opening line. He gets up there. Everyone's there. And he says to the congregation, friends, brothers and sisters, I have a confession to share. It grows quiet. You could hear a pin drop. The very best years of my life were spent in the arms of a woman who was not my wife. Collective gasp. And then he says, and I can't remember who she was. What's the point of the joke? Never forget the punchline. Don't forget the point of the joke.
That's the first time I heard that one. That's great, man. Thank you for that.
The beautiful thing I notice amongst Jews is, they're always telling jokes. There's always a song. There's always a story, but there's great truths in all of them, right? But we're trying to get those stories across and those words across in a way that people will listen to it. instead of just trying to tell somebody really.
Yeah.
There is a beautiful story I was sharing with you a little earlier, and that's why I said those jokes, because the life of a Chabad rabbi could be very challenging. What I mean by that is a Chabad rabbi is not a typical pulpit rabbi from 9 to 5 with a good package. He's a 24/7 rabbi, as you know from the Cunin family. And basically he's a startup rabbi, an entrepreneurial rabbi. He's everything that a rabbi needs and much more. So sometimes it gets a little bit much. So the times that I'm feeling a little bit depleted, I turn to this story of a very long day for the Rebbe, and he was leaving 770 Eastern Parkway. And he was heading into the car, and he had his private secretary there to assist. And there was a fellow who just sort of, sort of ambushed the Rebbe on the way and started to talk. And he was one of those guys who kept talking and would continue to talk until he was stopped. So the Rebbe's personal secretary interjected and said, "Listen, sir, with respect, do you mind wrapping up? The Rebbe's had a long day. He needs to get home because he's coming back this evening to see people through the night." The fellow wrapped up and he left. And as the Rebbe sat in the car and turned to the secretary, he did so with a kind gentleness, but as well, he wanted to convey something. And he says, the Baal Shem Tov, the very first Hasidic Rebbe, taught the following. This is one of the key essential teachings of Hasidism, that a soul could descend into this material world enclosed in a physical body for a lifetime and span of 70 to 80 years, all in order to do one solitary favor for another human being. The Rebbe then turned to the secretary and says, "Who knows? Perhaps my soul came into this world for that particular encounter. Who knows?" And what I find so moving about that particular story is that to the Rebbe, every encounter, the Rebbe viewed as perhaps this is the one. And imagine that for a second. If we took every encounter where someone needed something from us, could benefit from us, and we thought to ourselves, maybe this is the purpose of all purposes, I think we'd approach that differently. And that was the way the Rebbe lived his life on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a minute-to-minute basis, completely switched on. Now, I can't be switched on 24/7. It's too much. I'm not there yet, if I'll ever get there. But when I'm feeling depleted, I turn to that story because I know there's always something more to give. In fact, the very first Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, who was mentioned, had a custom. He would collect funds throughout the day for poor people, for orphans, for widows, to help them get married, to help educate children, and so forth. And the Baal Shem Tov would never go to sleep at night if he still had something remaining from the funds that he had collected that day. He would not put his head to pillow until he had given everything out that he had. And the Rebbe said this wasn't just monetary or material. This was emotional, existential. If the Baal Shem Tov looked in the mirror at night and says, "I still have more to give," he didn't go to sleep that night. And if I could read between the lines, the Rebbe was essentially saying, that's what I aspire to. And that's truly unique. But we can all absorb some of that. We can all take in some of that light. And I think that, again, this illustrious group really embodies that. But that, to me, those are personal stories that lift me in time.
I agree with what you say, and I'll tell you something. I feel and see that those who have sort of important work to do, and I'm going to say for God for a moment, it's like you have an energy that cannot be explained.
Even though the world seems, on the one hand, to be completely chaotic and upside down, we're seeing the fulfillment of some really important, fundamental biblical prophecies, both in medical breakthroughs, scientific breakthroughs, technological breakthroughs, that can, on the one hand, be seen as tools for, God forbid, negativity, but on the other hand, and talk about positivity bias, the Rebbe taught us to look at these things for what their potential for positivity is. And in that sense, the world has never been so closely connected to wisdom, to knowledge, and to faith. So it was the best of times, and it was...
Yeah. And we'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back, and more with Rabbi Mendel from the UK.
Many people today look at the world we live in with a sense of despair, and they think to themselves that our children will inherit a world worse off than the one we inherited from our parents. The reality actually is the very opposite. And that's the interesting thing about the media we imbibe, which we have to take very seriously. You know, we take physical fitness seriously. We eat well, we sleep well, we work out well, but we also have to take our mind, our mental, emotional hygiene seriously too. And that includes our media intake. So when someone asks me, Rabbi, all this positive stuff, is it real? I'm realistic, they say, code for I'm cynical. And I answer, well, what is real? Follow the data. The data is incredibly powerful. It's incredibly positive. That's one of the things about the media. They will skew our sense of reality because if it bleeds, it leads. So the Rebbe taught us to be much more conscientious about our media intake. In 2018, Time magazine invited Bill Gates as its first guest editor in 94-year history. And he designed that edition around positivity, about optimism. So if someone told you in 1990 that over the next 25 years, world hunger would decline by 40%, and that child mortality would halve, and extreme poverty would fall by 3/4, you'd have told them they were a naive fool. But the fools were right. This is truly what happened. And not just that, 200 years ago, 90% of the world lived in extreme poverty. Today, 10%. Here's an interesting one. Yuval Harari, the famous Israeli intellectual, he says, today more people are dying from eating too much than from eating too little. You know the joke about the couple who were very health conscious, and they were driving down the highway and a truck pulled over and knocked them out and they sadly passed away. They come to heaven. Angel Gabriel takes them to their penthouse suite and they're loving it. The husband turns to the angel and says, how much is it going to cost in rent? The angel said, that's the best part of heaven. It's free. They go in for lunch. There's a beautiful ballroom, exotic food stations from around the world. And the husband turns to the angel and says, where's the low calorie section? Where do I go for some organic stuff? The angel said, that's the best part of heaven. You don't have to worry about your health up here, your calories, your weight. Don't worry about it. At this point, the guy turns to his wife. He says, honey, if not for you and your silly health food, we could have been here 10 years ago. You know, the Rebbe was once asked, if you could live in any era of history, which would it be? And the Rebbe said in an instant, it would be this one. In other words, the Rebbe understood where we stand in historic terms. You see, our prophets told us from the beginning of time, there's going to be a positive trajectory. The arc of history bends forward. We believe there's an author and a storyline to the plot of human history. And we're actually reaching the climax. We're reaching that era of universal brotherhood where there will be an absence of conflict, hunger, war, and an increase of divine revelation and consciousness. Now, the way we look around our world, it's hard to see that sometimes. Revolutions, uprisings, rapid shifts in consciousness, as unsettling as these things may be to our lives in the moment, they're ultimately leading us to a more perfect union and a higher system of truth and harmony. Let me share with you a story. This is a story about the son of a chassid who was a journalist. And he was hospitalized before the high holidays. And his son came to see the Rebbe to receive a piece of honey cake in honor of the festival. The Rebbe smiled to the son, gave him the honey cake, gave him an extra piece, said, give this to your father, and may God bless him with a sweet and healthy new year. And then the Rebbe continued, tell your father that when he finishes the mission for which he was sent to the hospital, God will set him free from there. Wow. The son was surprised by the message, but he gave it to his father, and then suddenly he said, my father had a complete transformation. This man goes into the hospital. He thinks, oh, I had a heart condition. That's why I was hospitalized. He looks at the people to his right and left, says, oh, they're fellow patients. He looks at the people in gowns and masks, says, oh, these are medical professionals. But the moment the Rebbe told him, no, you missed the point of what's going on here. That might be the human narrative, but there is a divine providential narrative that you must absorb. That moment he began to see them as souls, co-traveling in the journey of life, that he was handpicked to touch along their journey. And he began to engage them in spiritual conversations. And when he passed, his children said during the Shiva, a gentleman, a distinguished doctor came and he said, I want you to know that my family's spiritual life took a change for the better when your father was hospitalized due to one conversation he had with me. So the Rebbe was teaching him something really powerful. We go through life thinking about these setbacks and aberrations and departures from the norm as wastes of time, wastes of energy. And we think, if only I could press the delete button to edit out those relationships, those failed business, career paths, etc., etc. The Rebbe is teaching, no, don't do that. To the contrary, find within those opportunities, those encounters, the meaning, the purpose for which you were put into those situations. It could be as extreme as a hospitalization, or it could be as beautiful and as uplifting as our encounter here today. But that's what the Rebbe taught. There is purpose in everyone, in everything, in every moment, and in every encounter. So this is my little parting message for us all, I think.
Fantastic.
That wherever we might be, whenever, with whomever, doing whatever, the Rebbe would encourage us to find the hidden spark, the divine light within that person, place, or thing. And what he would teach was, let's concretize it and let's turn it into action. Because as much of a philosopher as he was, he had no time for pontification. He had all the time for action. As we said, even till his in the early 90s, he was standing on his feet for 8 hours, giving a dollar bill to people. And when he was asked by a philanthropist, why? Why do you give this money out to people? What are you doing? He said, because when two human beings encounter each other, they should bring benefit for a third. So my message to us all and to the audience out there is that when we have an encounter with another human being, it shouldn't just be about two human beings getting together, which is in and of itself a blessing, but it should bring blessing for a third through concrete actions. Because the Rebbe taught it's not all or nothing, right? Take that one step forward. He said, don't think big, think small. Take concrete actions and make them part of your life, and you will find that the sum total effect over time is powerful, is tremendous. So I want to bless you that you take the power and the blessing, the gifts and talents God invested in you, Shmuel, and in you, John, and in you, Chaim and Levi, and let us pay it forward. Let us take our world and elevate it and illuminate it one person, one day, and one good deed at a time.
Beautiful. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Perfect timing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen.
Amen.
L'chaim to life. L'chaim to life. L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim to life.
More to come. We'll see you next week. Welcome to the Friends of Chabad. There are 5,000 of them around the world, and we're making it a personal mission to be in touch with each and every one. We're going to do episodes that are going to have rabbis, rebbitzins, dancing, mysticism, Kabbalah, family talk, foods, everything you can think of. Another inspirational episode. Get ready. Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Here we are, again, the Friends of Chabad. And as you've seen, every time we always go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we go to the brothers of Semach. But now we're going to the wife of Semach.
That's right.
The wife and the beautiful daughter, Goldie.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You recognize John Boyd? He was on the Chabad telethon. Maybe you've seen him before.
That's right. My connection to Semach, we both have a connection to Semach. Stephen actually had fill-in,
I had a blessing by him.
with him several times. And I met Semach when I was shooting a film in Melbourne, Australia, and he would come visit me and give me information about Noah, who I was playing Noah. So anyway, that's how I got to know him. And as I was learning from him, as he came to help me out with Noah, he just was trying to do what he did, in other words.
I can picture it. I've heard the story from him many times.
You're hearing the other side now.
But now I hear the other side, and I literally could picture
That's
just,
so funny. Tell me what you think happened from his point of view.
it was just
He
that
probably directed the movie.
he wanted you to know it. He just needed you to know the right story, the full picture, get it from the biblical,
Right.
proper way, so that when you're portraying it, you should really give over the right thing, the right.
Right, and I must say that the movie was a big challenge because it was all over the place and it wasn't really proper. It was proper. There was some stuff borrowed from Abraham and some stuff borrowed from here to make the story of Noah, which wasn't appropriate. So I had to deal with with Semek, who was trying to tell me the real stuff and to get it right, but he's so gentle, he certainly wouldn't hurt my feelings to think that I was doing something wrong, which I was. but anyway, I had a lot of fun with him. And I always felt when I was with him that I needed to be a little bit more like Semek.
Without a question, without a doubt. Tzemach had all the time in the world for everybody. There was never a moment that we were doing something as a family, somebody needed him, somebody called in. He's like, sure, no problem, and time just stood still for him because he was always helping somebody out. And he's like, oh, it doesn't matter, we'll be 5 minutes late. And somehow we were never those 5 minutes late. The time literally stood still when he was doing something good for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's what he stood for.
He'd also like to say the party starts when we get there. So even if we were late, the party didn't start yet because we weren't there.
That is true. That was Tati, very much.
And then I met these two. Well, that was the Yortzeit when I met you guys, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I spoke, and then these two came up to me afterwards, and they made me feel good. You know, they were thanking me for helping them. But they were so full of energy and fun, and I went to Chaim. Actually, it was one of the thoughts was, you know, for this thing, we just have to have them on this show.
The name Friends of Chabad, actually that's what Tzemach did for his life. He made people friends of Chabad. And really it was after his passing when we realized that he just touched souls. That's all he did. That's really what it was all about. Touching people, touching souls. And it was after his passing that people came out of the woodwork almost and came by. I mean, we had to put up a tent by the house. It was during the Shiva period when we sat to mourn him for the week. There were, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people that came through the home. And then others that telegraphed and video, you know, sent messages. And it was really, we realized like he was a unique soul. It was about touching lives, just touching their soul, igniting their flame, and making them friends of Chabad. Right. Just by virtue of who he was, who they were, all of a sudden it was like, oh wow, what does this stand for? And getting to know what Chabad was all about.
Golda made a little video for the Yortzeit?
Yortzeit.
So tell us a little bit about making this.
Initially, when my father passed away, I wanted to do and start something in his honor and in his memory. And there's so many people that do tefillin for different causes, different rabbis, different blessings. But my father was really about all the mitzvahs. Every one good deed serves a purpose and can change the world. So instead of aiming it and gearing it towards one specific mitzvah, I decided to make it into a tzemach moment, which every moment there's an opportunity to do something good, to change the world for the better, even if it's just like putting a little dime into the charity box, whatever it is, there's always someone you can smile to. Every moment you can make it into a tzemach moment as opposed to just confining it to a specific mitzvah. So I put out this video before the Yortzeit, before the anniversary of his passing, to promote it and hope that more people will take on to do good in his memory.
Let's see it.
Wednesday.
Beis
Tammuz.
marks the
first Yortzeit
Of Rabbi Tzemach Kunin.
Rabbi Kunin
Was a dedicated
Shliach of the Rebbe.
to Chabad of Century City.
He is known for
his kindness,
his warmth,
His care.
His empathy.
His compassion. And his genuine desire.
for peace and harmony.
For everyone.
so we ask.
you.
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 You. You. You.
You.
You.
You.
You.
You.
You.
You.
You.
You.
You.
Our friends.
Our family.
Our community.
Please do another mitzvah.
Take on a new hachlata.
A good resolution.
In his honor.
May the
Neshama of
Tzemach Yeshua ben Harav Baruch Shlomo Eliyahu
Be elevated.
And may we be reunited
With the coming of Mashiach.
speedily in our days.
Please share your mitzvahs and hachlatas with us on Instagram or through WhatsApp. Do a mitzvah, snap your mitzvah, share your mitzvah.
Very beautiful.
Yeah,
huh?
fantastic.
Thank you.
Very, very beautiful.
Very cool. When we come back, more of Semach's wife, Ada, and his beautiful daughter, Golda. Welcome back with Ada and Golda, Semach's family.
Did you know that Semach had a lot to do with the building of this school? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
You know, as a Chabad rabbi and as growing up the way he did, he just, in Yiddish, he had a chush. He had just
A hush?
a chush.
Never heard that one before.
He had a chush. It was just
That's a Yiddish?
one of his things that he was really good at, without having
hush.
any practice, without having any formal education towards it. But
He was born with it.
An inborn type of love for and understanding for contracting, for architect, for just, he enjoyed it very much.
So he took this on like he's been building forever.
And, you know, I don't know if you've met, I'm sure you've met Rabbi Kunin Sr. from Chabad Telethon, you know, John, you know, my father-in-law. When he took on a project, it was like, we're doing this, we're doing it quick. And he took on to build this incredibly magnificent block-long building.
It's a real building.
It's
it's down, up. It's big. It's a big building. It's a real building.
And, you know, maybe in talking to Tzemach about it, Tzemach would like just drop little ideas like, oh, why don't you do it this way? Why don't you do it this way? And so he's like, hey, you really know what you're talking about. So, of course, you know, they had a proper contractor, they had the proper architect, but Tzemach got involved in the minute-to-minute, day-to-day. I mean, he brought in like the magnificent stained glass windows. He did his research and he got somebody from Mexico. He gave him a storefront on the next block over who brought all his, you know, workmanship. He opened up a shop there for 6-8 months just to create all the windows. He went and did all the from the permits downtown to going, if he needed to Home Depot and picking up every screw and knowing. It's also, I mean, they say in LA, this is one of the safest buildings to be in, if God forbid we were ever hit with, you know, a massive earthquake. And so he gave his all. It was his life. It was to build this place. He
also had a great deal to do with raising the funds for it. And he had some secret, wonderful guys who fell in love with him.
Everybody did. He really was that personality. Everybody fell in love with him. He was.
Yeah, and those guys are great guys. Those, you know, the people who help Chabad are. This is an extraordinary work that they're taking on. They're sent out into the world. The Rebbe started this, sending them out into the world, and they have to raise money. They have to figure out a way to live, and they all survived and thrived and set up these different houses and activities throughout the world. And this was a big one. This was a big challenge. I saw a little of this myself when I was at some of the meetings, you know, to get to permissions and stuff like this, and to actually make this pitch for this place to be here, because there was controversy and people didn't want this, they wanted something else, and all of that. But I know Semach had a lot to do with convincing people to support this and bring this about. And those angels, and they really are angels in a certain sense, terrific people. He had great taste in human beings, and he knew how to motivate them and share the joy of doing something, you know, that was important. And this is really monumental what he did. So
I'm going to just add, it was also because he was working for the Rebbe.
Yes.
And when he was doing that, just a small little side story, there's another building right across the street that was being built at the same time. And they went down to town, they were looking for the permits, and they called their lawyers and like, look at Chabad. They're building a 4-story, block-long building, and the permits we're getting are only for a small little house in comparison. What's going on here? And because of their connection with talking to Tzemach and talking to what was going on, their lawyer said to them, unless you have a Rebbe, I am not fighting your fight. Because there's no way you're going to get those permits out of the city without doing it with the same pure love and faith that this building has been taken on for. And that's really what it was about. The doing it for the children, doing it for the community, doing it for perpetuating Jewry and the children to have a home in the heart of the community. That's really what it was.
Simple. And did you go to this school?
Yeah, so I was here from practically when it was built. From when I was 2, I was in preschool here, till I graduated 8th grade. And every year our class kept growing, more students kept coming as we went through the grades. And now we continue to the Chabad High School.
How many students do they have at one time here?
The building holds actually 3 different schools. There's the preschool, then there's the elementary and the junior high. In total, I believe the preschool holds about 70, 80, and between the elementary and junior high, I believe we're close to 400 to 500 students.
Wow. Something, huh?
We're pretty much busting at our seams already.
Wow.
It's time to find more place almost.
And this was built as a replica of the building in Brooklyn, right? 770.
This is actually the closest replica. There are many replicas around the world that have, and in the beginning, some people were opposed to the idea, how could you take the Rebbe's shul and make a replica of it? And some people were opposed to that idea, and they, sent in some not love mail towards Rabbi Kunin and said, what's going on here? How could you build something, that was original in Westwood?
Right.
So Rabbi Kunin wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and it actually went to the Rebbe's wife, Rebbe Chaim Mashka, who the building is named for, Beis Chaim Mashka. And the answer came back that they would be honored. What an honor it is that we would want to perpetuate and copy the building of World Jewry. Everybody knows the address 770 and what the iconic, triangles on top. And Tzemach had the architect fly to New York a number of times to make sure that if you go outside, you'll notice the pipe is the same exact design. And so the windows are very, very, very similar. He made the guy copy, he was artistic, so he let him have a little bit of leeway, but he gave him photos to copy very similar. Exactly.
And we'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back with Tzemach's wife and his beautiful daughter. Well, John and I have been now in the building with Tzemach's 2 brothers, and we've been feeling Tzemach's energy. Every day, he's been guiding us. He talks in my ear. Here's the questions you should talk about. I'm hearing now. What's that? Talk about the book?
It's possible.
The book. He wants us to talk about the book.
He does. His energy is definitely in these
You can
4
feel it in the
walls.
room.
He's in
You
there.
can
He's
feel
with
it in the
us.
room.
But the book really is special. I mean, the fact that it's named for, it's made Tzemach Yehoshua Kunin Memorial Edition. And if I understood correctly, did you give one of these books to the president?
John's going to tell you the story. I think it'll be fun for you to hear.
I'd love to.
Directly from John, the story.
Rabbi Kunin's son, Chaim Kunin, standing right there, taking our picture as we speak. But anyway, he told me, he said, here's a book, this is Tzemach's book, and I want you to give it to the President of the United States and thank him for all the, the support for the Jewish people, the support for Israel. I said, okay, I'll do that, So he's been to the White House now, Tzemach. Yeah.
I believe he may have been there.
He was there before, I think.
He must have
Yeah,
been.
I think he's
because
been there before.
As a young yeshiva boy, 13, 14, he was the youngest of the brothers, but his stories of, I was actually just telling my son who started yeshiva, and I was like, what you need is what Tati had at your age, to get on a train in Washington and go meet all the senators, get them to sign those papers without any direction. And I always question them, how did you just do that? When I need to get something done, it needs to be on paper, it needs to be scheduled, it needs to be planned out. I'd like to know where I'm going, when I'm going, how I'm going. Right. With him, they dumped him on a train in the middle of Washington, and thank God,
well, that's what the Rebbe did with everyone from the beginning. And that's what happened with, Chaim and Tzemach. Wonderful to see, and I would see them occasionally. I would see them running around Washington, trying to get people to sign papers. They knew exactly where all the senators were going to be at different points, coming down a corridor, and they'd be there. These young rabbis these kids, young people, were able to find a place to live and find a wherewithal to stay there and to do that work day after day. Amazing. Just what you talked about when they said, if you can find the purity of spirit, then you can build a place like this, but you can't do it without that energy. And that came from the Rebbe, I guess, you know.
Golda, a question for you. What was it like, or what is it like being the daughter of a rabbi?
It's a blessing, honestly, because I feel like from my class, I have a lot of classmates that also are kids of the rabbis and rebbitzins that are like, some are further, some are closer, and I think it just helps me grow up with an appreciation towards Judaism, and like everything is about helping people. My father, like the second someone needed help, he ingrained in me from when I was like born that like something needs to be done, it'll get done. Someone needs help, we will help them, we'll figure it out, we'll make it happen, we'll get it done. And I think that's more prevalent in growing up as the daughter of a rabbi.
Family is such an important part of life, having grown up in a very, very close Jewish family with my mother, my father, my brother, and my sister. It seems like in the Hasidic, you know, you're even more close. It just seems like you guys are, which I didn't think could be closer than my family, but it seems like you guys are really, really close. Can you say anything about that?
Families are born, and people do say, how can you have so many children? I mean, I'm actually known as the family that we had only 5, you know, the rabbi passed away.
You're a small family.
We're considered a small family, and, you know, I call my family, I call 2 generations, you know, and we left it up to God. Whatever God blessed us with, and every single child is a blessing. So I have what I call my 2 generations. I've got my Mendel, Goldie, and Levi, and then, you know, Chaim, Mashkin, Khan, and Blum are 8 and 6. So it's kind of separated. But when we sit together Shabbat meals every single week, there's purpose. When we're, you know, when your father is a rabbi, when your husband's a rabbi, when you're out there in the community, when your whole purpose in life is about helping others and doing good and following the ways of the Torah and, you know, celebrating with family. I've got to be honest, like, if it wasn't for family, and that's just, you know, that's my personal unit, but thank God the Cunin family is also, thank God, of an empire of its own. And if it wasn't for the Cunin family, our extended brothers and sisters and brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, I would not have gotten past my husband's passing. They were it's like one soul.
One unit.
One unit. And family is integral to be there for one another, to grow, to show, and to learn how to be out there in the world and to help others, because you had no choice. If you grew up in a large family, you didn't have a choice. And your next question might be, but people say, but how do you have enough love to go around? How do the families, you know, how do you even prepare for that? It's just there. Am I right?
For sure.
I mean, do you ever feel like one is taken away?
Definitely not.
We try to make time for one-on-ones with each child. You know, you pull them out of school for, you know, an hour's lunch, or, you know, you make sure that they know that they can always come and talk to you. Better come to talk to you than to find it elsewhere in the world, or it's the best thing in the world.
It is.
Well, I want to make a toast to your husband, who's here in the room with us, who's touched all of us greatly, and we thank you for sharing him with us. So I say l'chaim.
L'chaim. Thank you for having us.
To life,
l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim, to life. Get in here. Come on, the 2 boys. Get in here.
John has a special...
God would like us to be joyful, even if our hearts are panting on the floor.
Hey!
How much more can we be joyful if there's really something to be joyful for?
Hey!
To Shmuel, to Chaim, to Levi,
Hey!
to Samek, his family, his wife.
Yes!
I can hear Rabbi Samek say, here's to another day. Drink l'chaim, to life. That's something.
Great.
I tried. L'chaim, to life. Drink l'chaim, to life. Hey!
More to come. We'll see you next week. Welcome to the Friends of Chabad. There are 5,000 of them around the world, and we're making it a personal mission to be in touch with each and every one. We're going to do episodes that are going to have rabbis, rebbitzins, dancing, mysticism, Kabbalah, family talk, foods, everything you can think of. Today we're going to travel the world. We're landing somewhere. Follow me. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We're on the air.
Live from Las Vegas.
Wow, what a upbringing this has turned into, huh?
Can you introduce our guest,
Absolutely.
please?
So with us is Rebbitzin from Shapiro from the North Shore of Sydney, Australia. I actually got to meet them when I was in Australia, when the Rebbe sent me as a bachelor with on to other yeshiva bachers to go learn there and to study. I got to hang out in their Chabad house. So and now, Baruch Hashem, they got a lot of great stuff going on there.
So
in Sydney, Australia.
Rebbitzin.
Rebbitzin.
So a Rebbitzin is the wife of a rabbi.
And a rabbi, sort of in her own right, in the fact that rabbi means teacher and Rebbitzin means teacher. So
Co-teacher.
Feel free to jump in here at any time if they're getting it wrong. That's their interpretation.
But you know, it's interesting you say that because throughout history, in like synagogues, the rabbi is a rabbi and then his wife is a rebbitzin. When the Rebbe sent out a team, it's a team. So it's not that she's the rabbi's wife. They're the rabbi's
50-50.
50-50. There you go. It's a partner.
Could you step in and explain the truth?
The Rebbe used to say behind every great man, there's an even greater woman, the power behind the throne. He used to call the shlucha the power behind the throne. He had a lot of faith in the shluchos, in the Rebbitzins.
Yeah.
Partnering with the shluchim.
Well, I could understand that if I think of my mother, who John knew very well, she was really the power behind the family. And it was, you know, because people sometimes think, oh, it was my father. My mother, with everything. You know, the decisions, the power, where we were going to go, what we were doing, it was my mother. My mother was the energy, I call it the energy of that family. Right?
Yeah. It's called Jewish women.
Jewish women.
Jewish wives and mothers.
I know it, respect it, and have a great understanding of it, having grown up under it, next to it, and nurtured by it. But can you tell us your journey, your story? And I gather you were born then in Australia because I hear the accent.
Yep, I was born in Australia. My husband was born in America, and we came here on shlichus as the Rebbe's emissaries, 1989. Married my husband and somehow managed to schlep him here. Actually, the Rebbe advised us to come and live here on the North Shore, much to my husband's surprise. He really didn't think he was going to live in Australia, but it was under the Rebbe's specific and clear instructions that we come back here and we go to Sydney's North Shore, which is across the bridge, across the harbour bridge. There was no Chabad presence at all at that time. So we're still here. And, you know, once a shliach, always a shliach. We don't go anywhere. We just keep doing our work. And thank God, 30 years of being able to inspire and impact our fellow Jews and the wider community. It's really been a fantastic journey for us.
Ah.
What's fascinating with Rebbitzin here is that her parents were sent by the Rebbe to Australia, and her grandparents were also emissaries of the Rebbe in Australia.
Oh.
And her children are doing it now, right?
How many children do you have?
So I have 8 children, thank God.
Yeah.
And my parents were the Rebbe's emissaries to Sydney over 50 years ago. And then we decided to follow suit. And now my son is the Rebbe's emissary, the Rebbe's shliach with his wife, working in our organization. So it's a generational flow.
Wonderful. I'm always interested in the Hasidic family, having been observant of it for many years. I think of it as an ideal that the family itself and its interactions and the growth of the children and stuff, it's teaching by example everywhere that it's planted. And I'm just wondering, are you in the same place that you were born?
No, in fact, I'd never really come to this side of town at all. There's a Sydney Harbour Bridge. I never crossed the bridge. It was like, we all kept to ourselves. We thought it was the other end of the world. And when I got married, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going on shlichus as a Rebbe's emissary to the other side of the bridge. It was like the other side of the universe. But it's not the predominantly Jewishly populated. Like the population that's predominantly Jewish is on the eastern suburbs, which is the other side. And if you ever come to Australia, you can come visit us on the other side of the bridge.
John was in Australia because he played Noah in Australia.
Right, and that's where I met Semach. Did you ever spend time with Semach?
Did you know my brother Semach?
Yeah, I think he was a bacher here, right?
Yeah, he was.
Yes.
So when John was in Australia shooting the movie...
In Melbourne, yeah, in Melbourne.
You didn't come to Sydney?
No, I didn't. I've never been to Sydney. I'll come down and visit you next week.
Okay. We'd love to host you and for you to see the down underworld. We do not have kangaroos jumping around the streets.
Yes, you do.
You don't? Why go then?
In Melbourne, they had them.
You're joking.
In the outback, you know what I mean? As you drive toward different locations, I was there, and there were herds of these funny animals. I'm telling you, they were hysterical to me. I laughed so much.
Is this something else? We're going to take a short break. Welcome back, and more with Rebbetzin Shapiro.
What are some of your activities that you had, the main focus of your energies?
I think it's very much like a lot of other Chabad houses in terms of the wide range of activities that we offer. So we have a synagogue with services. We have an enormous amount of outreach activities, Jewish festival activities, a daycare center, preschool. We have a Hebrew school for children. Our educational activities are really for adults and children and all ages. Really offer a broad range of educational activities. So we also have actually, Rabbi Kuhn, this wasn't here when you were here, we have a center that actually houses many people who are unable to find accommodation elsewhere. They may be single or in difficult situations or circumstances. Particularly during COVID, we started a program called Helping Hands, where we distribute food and other necessities to people who are having it tough and finding it difficult. So not just our residents who are here, but also the broader community. We offer food packages and a lot of support. So the range of activities from social welfare to educational to just we have a mikveh for women, and for men as well when needed. So it's just such a broad range of activities for all ages, educational, social, welfare, the works, the lot.
So you would say that it's grown over the years you've been growing up, right?
Oh, definitely. Huge. I mean, Chabad's presence in Sydney is enormous. Many of the synagogues, the Orthodox synagogues, in fact, most of them, not officially Chabad houses, but even the Orthodox synagogues have Chabad rabbis. And the presence of Chabad it's a huge community and a huge, not just the Chabad community, but a massive outreach, many Chabad houses in Sydney. So Chabad has a really strong presence in Australia in general and certainly in Sydney as well.
How many Jews are there in Australia?
I think around 120,000 Jews in Australia, probably around 50,000 in Sydney.
Hopefully we're growing. Are we growing?
Hopefully, as is an issue in the States. Obviously, assimilation is a concern into marriage, but that's our job at Chabad, to try and inspire people to stay Jewish and to stay connected to their heritage and to their roots. So we hope that we're able to positively influence.
How are we finding that? Are we finding that people are moving away from Judaism, that people are losing their heritage and not wanting to even acknowledge that they're Jews, marry outside of Judaism?
Well, you can follow the data. And if you look around the world, whether it's in Australia or here in Southern California, I know for myself and for Levi, we watched, as Rebbetzin Shapiro watched in Australia, the expansion of the Jewish community and Jewish life in Los Angeles. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's because of Chabad.
That is
It's
correct.
directly related to Chabad. People are receptive all over the world to Chabad, just the way I am. When I go to a place, I said, "Where's the Chabad house?" And I could be anywhere. You know what I mean? In the middle of a desert somewhere.
Right.
They say, "Oh, it's just down the corner around the thing."
There's one everywhere.
But if you don't find them, they'll find you. Don't worry about it.
That's exactly right.
That's true.
We know what you look like, John.
It's exactly true.
They say generally about leaders that great leaders create followers. The Rebbe created leaders, not just followers, and that was the Rebbe's goal, to create leaders. He influenced so many people, not just to follow his philosophy, but to become leaders and inspire others. And that's really part of the enormous impact of Chabad, the leadership around the world, and the Chabad houses that create leaders within their own right as well.
It goes back to the Baal Shem Tov. He created leaders right from
That's
the
right.
beginning, you know.
But everyone could be a leader. It's not, you don't have to be a great person to be a leader. Like I said before, if Chabad finds you, they're not just going to find you to encourage you to do a mitzvah or to believe in yourself. They'll make you a leader in your own right. You become your own ambassador.
Put you to work.
That's it.
Yeah, that's right. You're right.
John canceled all of his other engagements. He's only doing the Rebbe's work.
Yeah, that's right.
If it was up to you, yes.
They stripped me down. That's all I do anymore.
In your own way, you're showing the leadership too. So we're all part of the same team, really.
Exactly right, yeah. When I first met their father, who you probably know, yes?
Yeah.
Rabbi Kunin. It was an overwhelming experience. It always has been for everybody who ever meets him. It's too bad we can't meet him for the first time every once in a while because he's a shock to the system, you know?
Incredible passion.
Yes, incredible. But I find that everyone in the Chabad universe has that energy. We're just talking about the people that we see. You know, all of you folks who say I'm from Chabad in some way, there's a very special energy, and it's all positive energy.
That's inspired by the Rebbe. It didn't matter his age. He had enormous passion, enormous energy, and he infused that in his shluchim.
Their father arrived the other day, Rabbi Kunin. You know the most important thing on his agenda, and the first thing he wanted to do? Put the tefillin on everybody. That was it. That was the most important thing for him. Line up next. It was like giving shots, right, everybody? Next. Talking about tefillin, can you explain what tefillin even is?
The tefillin are the leather boxes that we put on every day. Inside them there are scrolls, handwritten scrolls on parchment with the name of God in a way that we don't pronounce it, but we write it inside there, both on the hand and on the head, 4 scrolls.
Do women put tefillin on as well?
No, women don't have a mitzvah to put on tefillin, but actually, believe it or not, there were some pretty great women throughout Jewish history that did put on tefillin, including the very daughter of the first Chabad Rebbe. The reason why women don't put on tefillin is because it's not a biblical commandment. The idea of tefillin, in the Rebbe's own words, when someone asked the Rebbe, he said, "Could you tell me a modern metaphor for tefillin?" And the Rebbe said, tefillin is a first form of wireless technology. That's something when we put on the tefillin gives us the ability to attach to something that without it we could not do so. And here's the big one. The reason why women are not given the mitzvah, they don't have the obligation to do so, is because where we get with the tefillin, they are there naturally. They're given that naturally with the motherly instinct, so it's not necessary for them to do that external exercise. They don't have to have the external Wi-Fi thing. They got it plugged in inside.
Also, another point there is that women are not obligated in mitzvot that are time dependent. So it would be very, very difficult for a woman to be bound to put on tefillin before a certain time of the day. A woman's schedule can often be quite erratic, and the Torah is very sensitive to the needs of a woman. It really expresses part of that sensitivity to our role as a mother predominantly. Imagine having a little baby and having to rush and put on tefillin before the time.
And now we're going to take a short break. Welcome back and more with Rebbetzin Shapiro.
I have one piece of information from the Bible that stays with me. It's the opening of the 2nd chapter of Genesis, where it directs itself to the difference between man and woman, which was so fascinating to me. And because I'm an actor and I like stories and words and whatever it is, this story is terrific to me. I like to act it, actually. In the beginning of the chapter, it says, God looked down upon the world and he saw Adam. So it says, it's not good for man to be alone. I will have to find a helpmeet for him. So he looks down and you can see Adam sitting there, with nothing to do, you know what I mean? And he's looking around and God looks down and says, Adam? Yeah? He said, look, would you like to have a helpmeet? He said, okay. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do, Adam. I'll pass all the animals in front of you, and if you find helpmeet, you know what I mean, that's going to be yours. So I'll pass the animals, and you can name them anything you want to name them, too. So he says, okay. Sitting on a rock or something. And he says, well, how do you like this one? It's tall. He said, you like it? What do you want to name this animal? Giraffe. Giraffe it is. Okay, let's see the next one. Let's see. And he goes through the next one. It's a rhinoceros, and this, and blah, blah, and still. And then it has this wonderful, touching phrase. And still, there was no helpmeet for him. So plaintive, you know? So then God says, I've got to take this in my own hands. And so he puts him into a deep sleep. And from the place closest to his heart, or the rib, or whatever that is, he shapes a woman. Now in that, it says in the commentaries, and I believe that this was very profound, he says that God's hand, like the potter's hand is on the material, God's hand is on the woman. Therefore, women are closer to God than man. He looks at man more objectively than he does to women. Women are more of his input and soul and representation because the energy is on the woman. And some of the rabbis interpret that to mean that that's women's intuition. This famous thing, women's intuition. And every man knows that. Every man knows that. That spend any time with a family, you know that there comes a point where man just drops back and just knows that he's not as smart as the woman. The woman has to take over here. And from that comes the phrase, yes, dear. Anyway, and then he said, well, all of this being done, he wakes Adam up. This is the way I interpret it. And he wakes him up, and he sees woman, and he says, oh, this is flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. Whoa! And then God says, hold it, Charlie, hold it. He said, therefore, leave your mother and father and cling to your wife. And I've always thought that was a tremendous. I like telling that story. I thank you for listening to me because it makes me feel like I know what I'm doing, you know, in the world with the sexes. That's it.
I think it was a good interpretation.
Thank you. Slowly they applaud me. You see what I mean? There's no spontaneity in this at all. They're just trying to help the poor fella out.
That explains it.
There's a lot of that. Just dancing separately in temple. The women have a place where they can just be with the kids, and they're not so directed toward the Torah readings and the words. It's not important. They know it. They know it. They know it. I get it from his mother, who was my mentor. I have to say that. She was my mentor, and she never read a book. She didn't understand why anybody would read anything, and it's because she knew it all.
I think women, like you say, it's the intuition. Women intuitively.
Yeah.
Intuitively know.
Feel that connection.
Just born with it.
And still, I will never compete with that because I love to read and I love to get stuff from reading. Do you know? I won't give it up, but I do know that there's a higher way. There's a higher way. But but I'm just a man.
You say you'll never compete with that. I don't think men can ever compete with that.
No, that's what I say. No, that's right. It is absolutely right. Well, I think, very high people have that connection, like the Rebbe, And actually, all of the Chabad have some of that, I think.
Can we make a blessing?
Let's do a blessing.
What a great idea.
I've been thinking that when we're here, we are in California, and the Rebbetzin is in Australia. When we make a blessing, and then she says Amen, or Amen, but Amen, then we kind of create a rainbow because we make the blessing.
Beautiful.
And the light goes to the other side of the world, right? So here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyah bidvaro.
Amen.
L'chaim to life. L'chaim to life. L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim to life.
How inspirational was that? We're going to see you again next week. Friends of Chabad. Welcome to the Friends of Chabad. There are 5,000 of them around the world, and we're making it a personal mission to be in touch with each and every one. We're going to do episodes that are going to have rabbis, rebbitzins, dancing, mysticism, Kabbalah, family talk, foods, everything you can think of. Another inspirational episode. Get ready. Hold on. 1, 2, 3.
That's a little stanza of a song that is referred to as the song of Lechatchila River.
Over the top.
The song of jumping over obstacles.
Oh,
Just
very
give you
good.
the main stanza.
Think of us like your Hasidic jukebox.
Press the button, see what comes out. Right? Did you guys sing a lot as kids together?
We always, it's part of the Hasidic life, And being in the Rebbe's presence, one thing everybody remembered, being in the Rebbe's presence, and when the Rebbe would walk into synagogue, with his hands, they'd be singing, and then when he finished, as soon as he finished, and the Rebbe's walking out of synagogue, everybody starts singing with his hands. And when anyone ever asked the Rebbe, how you doing? The Rebbe had the same answer. Tamid b'simcha, always in joy. So singing is a big part of that. Yeah?
Joy is one of those commandments of the Bible, of the Torah, that is an overriding commandment, all-encompassing. And a great deal of attention in the Hasidic teachings are focused on that everything we do must be done with joy. And if it's done without joy, then it's lacking. Why? Why is joy so important? The reason why joy is so important, the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneir Zalman, talks about it in Tanya, is because joy is the ultimate expression of faith. When we are happy and joyful, it's because we know we are in God's hands and that God loves every one of his creatures, we are his children, and only wants the best for us. So even if something doesn't seem so good today, when we are aware of that, we are joyful of it because we know that God made this happen for our benefit, for our good. That's joy. So therefore, any lack of joy is a lack of faith. So joy is really important, very important.
When you see many successful people, you see that they're joyous in what they do, and they become very successful at it. Whenever you hear whoever who's running a huge company and he started and he talks about, you see this joy, he says, oh, you better be prepared to work really hard. It's not going to be like you think. Everyone says the same thing. You better really be able to be committed to it and be passionate about it and enjoy what you're doing or you'll never get there. Every one of them says the same thing.
That's why the Talmud teaches us a person should and find the area in Torah that you find interest in, because then you'll have more joy, and it'll bring out the creative part of you within it. So yeah, absolutely, it's a...
So tell us about the Rebbe.
That's it.
The journey of the Rebbe.
So essentially, the Rebbe was one person prior to accepting the role of Rebbe, and then entered into a completely different state of existence once he accepted that role.
So yeah, so go back prior. Tell us a little bit about his life prior, and what his expectations were from people who were watching this amazing energy, right?
Yeah.
And then what made him finally commit?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about
We
that.
talk about the Rebbe's childhood.
So the Rebbe was born in Nikolaev and raised in Yekaterinoslav, it's called. The Rebbe's father,
today they call it the Dnepr.
the Dnepropetrovsk.
Yeah.
And the Rebbe's father was the Rav, the halachic rabbi of the town, and was also a great Kabbalist, himself having been a descendant of the Schneerson lineage. And the Rebbe at a young age was known and recognized to be a prodigy. After that was noticed, his father taught him himself and brought special teachers to teach him and his brothers. They were 3 brothers, and they were all brilliant. In fact, the Rebbe spoke many, many languages, and there was a contest, I think it was starting at the age of 9, that the brothers had about how many languages they can master. And I heard numbers like 17 or 19 languages that the Rebbe had mastered as a young man. But the Rebbe was very private, humble, and not known to many people at all. And that's how he led his life. Was at the young age of 25, I believe, is when he was introduced to the previous Rebbe's daughter, Chaya Mushka. And when they married, whereas other members of the previous Rebbe's family were more prominently profiled, the Rebbe chose a different path and actually went to study in the Sorbonne.
He was a scientist, yes?
Yes, a engineer. And some of his classmates then told of how the Rebbe would actually study Talmud during the lessons, would have both books at the same time, and would be pursuing his Torah studies at the same time while he was in the university.
But it was only after he married the daughter of the present Rebbe of the time did the conversation even enter into the possibility of maybe one day he'll be the Rebbe. But the Rebbe was very modern. He dressed differently. Look at the pictures of him at a young age. He's sharp.
What years is this?
1940.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else is wearing these fur hats, the Hasidic ones. The Rebbe's wearing like this sharp gray hat. But he was into that, like deflecting any attention from him. So people thought of him as this a very, very wise person, but maybe a little modern to be Rebbe. Maybe too modern. He's in college, not realizing he was very involved in communal work, but all discreetly.
There's a lot more to come. Stay tuned. See you in a minute or two. Welcome back to more Friends of Chabad.
What I had heard was that the Rebbe was pursued for a long time to become the Rebbe by the rabbis of the Chabad.
Yes.
Who had lost their leader, yes?
Yes.
So they went after him. And he resisted that for many years.
Well, it was actually only 1 year.
It was 1 full year.
But they went after him like every single Chabad guy around the world had anything.
And if any of you have ever connected with the Chabad, you understand that if they come after you, they come after you.
It's hard to say no. Hence, we're sitting here.
They'll grab you. You know what I mean? They have the mitzvah vans in New York. Is that what they have?
The mitzvah vans. That's the best.
Mitzvah what?
Mitzvah tanks.
The mitzvah tanks. So you have a van pull up in New York, and out comes 3 rabbis like these guys with tefillins flying in the air. They're coming after you. You know what I mean? And they get a lot of people. I mean, telling you, they catch a lot of them. But anyway, they really are aggressive in the most holy way. They're bringing good news and joy and real answers to basic problems for people, helping everyone. And that's how, and I don't know how I got into that group, but I know.
None of us know how we got it, but somehow we're here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But
I told you, I was just passing by, I heard the guy singing, I walked in.
That's it. So really they came after him, and this is what I heard. Then he said, if I'm going to be the Rebbe, then you're going to be the Rebbe. It's not going to be me. Something like that.
Well, first of all, so what happened was his father-in-law, who was the Rebbe, passed away. And after the previous Rebbe passed away, there was an older brother-in-law. And there were some people that thought that he's an older brother-in-law and he should
maybe it would come.
He should become the older brother-in-law. But the people who were kind of, next generation, and they realized the greatness of the Rebbe, started to, ask the Rebbe if he would take him. And the Rebbe said, my father-in-law never told me to take on this position.
And so he resisted completely.
But it was interesting because it was 1 year later, on the day of the yahrzeit, which is the amount of time that Judaism tells us to mourn.
The mourning finishes when?
A year later.
1 year. So that's a long time to mourn.
It's a long time. And during that period of time, there were many of the followers that were coming and asking, we need you to take on we can't be without. And when the Rebbe accepted leadership, the first thing he spoke about was the ultimate mission, which is the mission of mankind that began with Moses to bring heaven down to earth. That us physical human beings, despite the fact that it doesn't seem this way, but we have a possibility that we could do something that no other creature could do. And the Rebbe said, this is it. We are now in the time where that which history lives for till this very moment, we're here to do it together. So I'll be your Rebbe, but I'm not doing the work for you. We're doing the work together. And we're doing that right now. Because the ultimate purpose of it is to bring the spirit of heaven, that we're no longer of this. We're in this world, but we're no longer of it anymore. We're of a higher world living in this world. So the Rebbe began that when he accepted, after much pressure, the leadership of becoming the Rebbe. And from that time, I don't know how the Rebbe, I can't imagine a human being living the way he did, meeting with people from all over the world from 11 p.m. till 7 in the morning, coming back to work at 8, an hour later. This would happen several days a week. And people would tell in the story, they say that when I was in there, I felt like there was nothing else on the Rebbe's mind other than me and my problems. So the Rebbe, once he moved into the position, he was all in. He was all in.
But the Rebbe, when he was younger, was very dynamic and a very different figure than he was as he became older. And as he became older, he was this wise older man, very. But when he was young, he was a go-getter. It was very, very interesting to see the difference. But anyway.
I have to say that the spirit of go-getter never left the Rebbe. It grew in the Rebbe. As his body got older, that spirit of go-getter was so alive, and the way it became alive in a young way was through all the Chabad rabbis and their Rebbitzins feeling that vigor of the energy that he could no longer do physically because he was elder. But you could imagine for a second when you're out there doing whatever you're doing and say, if the Rebbe was here now, this wouldn't be enough. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't stop here.
I got you.
How many Rebbes have there been? Because there's a Rebbe almost for like each generation. Is that what? Or it might be longer, it might be shorter.
If you start with the Chabad Rebbes, Chabad Rebbes, so our Rebbe is a seventh of the Chabad Rebbes. Okay. And in short, what Moses was in his generation to the Jewish people around him, the Rebbes, starting from the Baal Shem Tov and all the 7 Chabad Rebbes, served that role of being shepherds, both being concerned with people's material needs. What do they need? Somebody once came by the Rebbe and said, the Rebbe said to him, do you know such and such a person? And he said, yeah, he's my friend. So the Rebbe said, how's he doing financially? He said, I don't know, I never asked him. He said, how could he be your friend if you don't know how he's doing financially?
Yeah,
You know, so the Rebbes were a shepherd in a way where it was personal. What is your needs right now? Before what your religious views are, et cetera, et cetera. How can I help you? What are your needs? You're coming to me. Tell me how I can be of help. But of course, with that came this wealth and depth of spiritual shepherd. During those moments when we need it most, that boost, that energy, where the Rebbe, with just in every generation, with that wisdom, being able to put it into a capsule, that boom, faster than anything you can imagine, transforms a person. Stories after stories.
How many rabbis are there in the entire world?
How many rabbis of throughout the Jewish world?
How many rabbis?
You know,
are there?
it's a very good question, but as I think of it, I have to imagine that the majority of traditional rabbis serving in, that are observant and orthodox are probably, I would think, at least 70-80% probably are Chabad, or emissaries of the Rebbe, maybe more. But it's a good question. I want to look it up.
And we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, and here we go again. Who was the first rabbi? How did this all begin?
So the first Chabad Rebbe was Rabbi Shneir Zalman.
But even before then, how did it all begin? What is the concept of the rabbi? Who was the first rabbi? How did it start?
That's a great question. So when there's every Jewish question has more than one answer, right?
I know that question. We're going on for 3 hours right now.
Because you can't remember the other three, you can give us one.
Exactly. But Moses is the first Rebbe.
So was he considered a rabbi?
He wasn't referred to as Rebbe back then, but the idea is the same. So basically, it's a structure where throughout Jewish history, there are always certain people who demonstrate a great deal of everything that we're here to do in their thoughts, in their speech, in their action, many of them from a very, very young age, very learned, etc. And in Chabad cases, it was always that the Hasidim elected that this is the Rebbe, we know who he is. It wasn't like someone ran for the job, but his idea is to be the one who helps anyone who comes into encounter with him to shepherd their own faith that we have already inside of us. So we all have faith inside of us, but it's easy to live life and not be in touch with that. As somebody once asked the Rebbe, he said, Rebbe, what do you do? What is it that you do? And the Rebbe said, you see that switch on the wall? So I was talking about the switch, and basically goes through this whole thing about electricity, how it gets to the room, and says, but if that switch isn't on, then the lights don't go on. He says, I help people find the switch within them to click it on.
Wow.
And that's what Moses did for his time.
Did you say that Schneerson was the seventh
generation? In the Chabad lineage.
Okay.
But may I make just an important distinction? Yeah. There's Rabbi, which is commonly known, Rabbi Levi or Rabbi Chaim. You could just call me Chaim. And then there's Rebbe. And there's a C of a difference between rabbi and Rebbe. So a rabbi, rabbi means teacher. So a rabbi who teaches others and teaches a classroom would be called a rabbi. And he has ordination. So he went through training, went through the yeshiva, and was tested, etc. There are different categories within rabbis. Some are halachic rabbis that deal with adjudication of Jewish law, which is at different level. Then there are those that are just congregational pulpit rabbis. There are those rabbis that are teachers. There are rabbis that have the ordination but don't practice as rabbis. Then you have a Rebbe. A Rebbe is an acronym of 3 Hebrew letters: Resh, Beis, Yud. Rosh B'nai Yisrael, the head, consciousness of the Jewish people. And that begins with Moses, but actually before Moses, that was Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Before them, it was Noah. Before him, it was Adam, and many in between. And those special souls are referred to by the Zohar as the Raya Mehemna, Aramaic for the shepherd of faith. And each generation, the Zohar teaches, must have at least one such soul that is the shepherd for all of the souls in that generation. In the days of the prophets, those were the prophets. In the days of Moses, it was him. In fact, the Zohar says that in every generation, there is a spark of Moses, who was the ultimate Rebbe of the Jewish people and of all humanity. And that is, it must be present in every generation. And if that spark is not present, there could not be that connection, because without that pure shepherd in each generation, we would all be like lost sheep, literally. And we all experienced many incredible interactions with the Rebbe, and for me, this one I think comes to mind. And when I was maybe 9 years old, and our father was the great trailblazer, emissary of the Rebbe, charting the new path in doing the Rebbe's work. So, but we were also just kids and his children, and we all had our issues, as kids have. And I was going through a tough time at that age, and but I thought to myself, I'm not going to bother my father with my petty issues at school. Some kids were bothering me. I was going through a hard time, and I spoke of it to no one. I felt like I'm not going to do that, put that added burden on him. So we come by the Rebbe on that day with myself and some of the family members that were with us, and I get the $1, and then I go on my way. And then my father was behind me, but I didn't stay. I just kind of went out. And my father pulls me aside. He says, "Chaim, what's going on?" I said, "Nothing." Yeah. He said, "What is something bothering you?" I said, "No, everything's good." He said, "Tell me what's happening." And I wouldn't, I wasn't going to tell him my little problems. And then he started crying. He said, "Tell me what's bothering you." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because the Rebbe just stopped me and said, why is the face on your child not joyful?" And he didn't answer because he didn't, and the Rebbe pressed him and said, "Tell me, why is the face of your," in Yiddish, why is the face of your child not joyful? And that allowed me to open up to my father and tell him my little, big for me at the time, but and that changed my entire childhood, because first of all, it opened that channel of communication. But more than that, to know that the Rebbe noticed me in that 1 second, that took me through and takes me through till this day, to know that I'm not alone.
So there's not a new Rebbe since he's passed away? Or is there?
The Rebbe spirit continues to drive us in a way that...
But you're waiting for the next Rebbe? There'll be another one at some point? How will you decide that?
The next act is Mashiach, which we're going to talk about. But that's the next act.
Are we allowed to do a blessing to the Rebbe?
It's interesting you say that, because the Rebbe spent his entire life blessing people. People came to the Rebbe for guidance and for blessings. And when we bless people, we actually unleash and unlock certain energies that are waiting to be uncovered and unsealed. So every time we bless each other, that's a way of invoking that great power of blessing.
Well, so I'd like to give the blessing.
There you go.
Yes.
I give the blessing to the Rebbe, who has helped start all of this, which has allowed us to come together like this. I feel like he's here, and he's done so much for us. So I send my love and blessing back to him.
Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
L'chaim.
L'chaim to life. L'chaim to life. L'chaim to life.
I don't know about you, but I've been deeply moved by this episode. More to come. We'll see you next week. Welcome to the Friends of Chabad. There are 5,000 of them around the world, and we're making it a personal mission to be in touch with each and every one. We're going to do episodes that are going to have rabbis, rebbitzins, dancing, mysticism, Kabbalah, family talk, foods, everything you can think of. Today we're going to travel the world. We're landing somewhere. Follow me. And as we've promised, we're traveling the world, and today we are lucky to be in Thailand with Rabbi Cantor. Do you want to introduce Rabbi Cantor?
Rabbi Cantor is the Chabad emissary of the Rebbe in Thailand. Last I heard, there are over 15 centers that are under your direction throughout the region.
What's the region? When you say the region being all of Asia?
My region, there's a couple of regional heads. Mine is pretty small. It's just Thailand, India,
wow,
Cambodia, Laos,
wow,
Kathmandu.
Small, yeah, I got it.
So we have 15 Chabads throughout all of those places?
Yeah, maybe more. I lost count.
Rabbi, can you tell us how you ended up in Thailand?
That's a good question.
Take your time.
I woke up in Thailand. So here's my wife's from Los Angeles, and I grew up in Australia. Actually, you can't hear it in my accent. I can have an accent if you want it, but I kind of keep my accent in my back pocket. But I grew up between Melbourne, Australia, and New York. So the matchmaker said, "Matchmaker, make me a match. There's a nice young girl in Los Angeles, nice young boy and young man in New York." And the first thing they tick off on the list when you do a Chabad match, what does he want to do for a career? He wants to be a shaliach. Okay, what does she want to do? She wants to be a shlucha. She also wants to be, both want to be emissaries. Great. So I think that what we were thinking was like kind of Long Island, or worst case scenario, West Coast.
Right.
I wouldn't be too close to my mother-in-law, so I wasn't so hot about that. But whatever, that was what we meant. But we were in New York for a year. We had our first child, and we were looking where are we going to be dispatched to. And the Thailand Jewish community had written to the Chabad headquarters, asked the Rebbe to send somebody to be the rabbi of their community. And we were the lucky ones. And we asked the Rebbe nodded his head. He was unwell at the time, so the answers were either yes or no. And we asked the Rebbe, should we go to Thailand? The Rebbe nodded his holy head and said yes. We heard that through the secretary. And we got on the plane, came to Thailand, and as they say, it's a one-way ticket. The return ticket comes with the Mashiach.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's at the end of 1992.
Right.
Wow, a long time. A beautiful country, Thailand. Can you tell us about the connection of Thailand and Judaism? Does it go back a long time? Has there always been Jews in Thailand? Is that something new? Do they look at you and go, wow, who are you? Or is that something that's just been sort of part of everyday culture for them?
Now, you see, in this area, there was colonization of the British colonized, right? They were in Hong Kong, Singapore, Burma, India, all around Thailand. Thailand was never colonized. Siam was never colonized. So together with the colonization of the British came the Iraqi Jews, because Iraq was also a British colony. And so you have a lot of Jewish life around Thailand, like the Sassoons and, very, very strongly established Jewish families from 100 years ago. Thailand never really had that. You had, I guess, some traders, sporadic traders, but the Jewish community started developing it closer to around the Second World War time. Started to develop more, more seriously. Vietnam War time brought a lot of activity, chaplains, Jewish Army chaplains from America. That was another time when the community had an influx. It's still not such a large community. In the last few decades, a lot of Israeli travelers after the army, they loved coming here, and that's no really old community here, like going back more than 50, 60 years.
But Thailand is a very spiritual place. At least that's what we have always been sort of led to believe.
It depends what I think you will ask some people about Thailand. You'll hear a very unspiritual side to it as well.
That part also.
Many people, Thailand has a huge tourist turnover, mostly not coming for spirituality, I suspect.
Why don't you share with them about the Shabbat dinners you have over there? Because that's like the world known for that.
What we discovered is after the Rebbe passed away, so all of a sudden I realized this has got to be a major we got to do something majorly transformational to add light into our part of the world. So we came up with a new program, and that was to host Israeli backpackers after the army, and we set up centers for them. So I'll tell you in a nutshell, I call it Birthright in reverse. Project Birthright is to take Jewish kids from the United States and Europe and give them an Israel experience. And millions and millions and millions of dollars is poured into that experience. It's a very fascinating study. When you get kids and give them that experience, it has a transformational effect on them. For the Israelis, they grow up in Israel. So we found that when they travel here, if we give them a wholesome, just, Shabbat experience, it can be transformational. They discover a different aspect to their own heritage, which they didn't really know about so consciously in Israel. Don't forget, Israel has there's a lot of politics. There's, wherever you are in the place you live, you can't really learn. Travel is the most amazing thing. Now, we don't have to pay for their tickets. We don't have to pay for their hotels. They do all that themselves. They're traveling, they're touring. All we have to do is provide the home away from home experience. So we set up Chabad houses. In a Friday night, like middle of August, we would be hosting literally 2,000 to 3,000 Shabbat dinners between all our centers. Now, let's say in Kosovo, we can handle 450 at a time. So it's 2.5 sessions. So the first session starts, let's say, when at sundown. It's around 6:15. The first session finishes at 8 o'clock. Half hour later, the second session starts. Another 450 people all didn't even know. When I went to lead it, I thought, okay, I'm drained. I led 450 people. I have to lead the songs and the prayers. Okay, and then is the room going to fill up again? We have all the waiters take off. They set the table again. 450 people fill in the room, and I got to pretend like I'm doing this for the first time.
So we'll be right back after a short message. More with Rabbi Yosef Kantor. Welcome back. More with Rabbi Yosef. Can somebody explain even what Shabbat means and what it actually is?
The Sabbath.
I'll tell you what Shabbat means in Thailand. It means continuing the tradition that started when God came down at Sinai and said He wants the Jews to keep the seventh day holy. So from Friday at sundown, or even 18 minutes before sundown, when the Jewish women and girls light Shabbat candles, the spirit of the seventh day is ushered in. Shabbat's the day of rest, the day of holiness. We mark it with a family dinner, except that our family, as I've just said, can be a couple of thousand people. We're just one extended family. And then that continues with not working and, how do they call it today? Unplugging. We unplug fully till nightfall on Saturday night. So, I'll be honest, Saturday we have a big lunch as well, very heavy food. We eat Saturday midday, because that guarantees that after you eat that food, you go take a nice nap. And but we have less people the Saturday lunch, I'll be honest. The Friday night, that's where the place is rocking and rolling. The spirit of watching 450 people, disparate, separate people walk in, and within a half hour to 45 minutes, it blends like one teeming mass of a living organism that's blended into one.
Anybody and everybody is invited?
It's geared towards Jews. The occasional non-Jew will come, but he may probably feel a little bit out of place just because this particular program is in Hebrew.
It's for the Israeli soldiers.
After the army,
they've
been through the most intense few years of their lives, and the top hotspot where they travel to for some reason is Thailand. And in many cases, they go there to kind of detach from everything they've experienced from their army, their country, their family. They just unplug completely. And that's where they first, in many cases, discover their Jewish heritage all over again on their own.
So during a Shabbat service, is there a certain conversation that's encouraged? Or it's just getting to know each other and just being with family? Or is it usually there's something that you're trying to get across to each other? Is there a topic every Shabbat?
The general theme of the entire Shabbat is that the weekdays are mundane and Shabbat is holy. So what does holy mean? Means that it's an elevated experience. So what do you talk about? That which is elevated. So we don't talk politics. We don't talk about business. We don't talk about any of that. We talk about stories, stories that we had during the week, you know. And over there, these 450 people coming together, most of them don't know each other. They meet there that night. That's fascinating what Rabbi just said. And then within a half hour, because their experiences, they're all best of friends.
Can I ask a question? How do you keep kosher in Thailand?
You know, one of the things that the Jewish community asked Chabad is said, send a rabbi. By the way, he needs to know how to make kosher chicken, slaughter kosher chicken. I suspect some of them were more concerned about me knowing how to prepare kosher chicken than about my knowledge of the deep literature and of philosophy of Judaism. They were concerned to be able to have good chicken soup, kosher chicken soup. So I did a course to study that, and for the first many years I was the one who prepared kosher chicken here. In every Chabad house we actually have a restaurant. I can tell you, just hang on one second.
He comes back with a chef's outfit.
I'll just tell you, I actually have the figures. Like from a year ago, 25,000 kilo of kosher beef we imported from Argentina to use in all our restaurants and all our dinners and all stuff.
25,000 kilo.
I can tell you, 75,000 kilo, 75 ton of chicken we prepared this. So I'm not doing this anymore. We bring in a staff, we bring in a team. We have restaurants. I think we had in our restaurants 180,000 restaurant meals that we served at our kosher restaurants. So it's kosher, it shouldn't cost extra. We don't believe you should pay a premium for needing to eat kosher. And it's an outreach. People come in, so it's a huge, we have a whole setup for preparing kosher food here. We have, actually have now a kosher a dairy cafe with pizza, and we have a full line of imports from Israel, kosher wine, and we're fully set up. We're not hungry here. We got plenty of stock.
You know what else is so fascinating, Rabbi Kantor, if you can share a bit about, and that is incredibly the largest Passover Seder in the world doesn't take place in New York, doesn't take place in Jerusalem. It takes place in Bangkok, Thailand.
Really? I never would have expected that.
Usually we say the largest Seder in the world is in Kathmandu, Nepal, because we have a large Chabad Seder there. Actually, we've had to adjust that. It's the largest one under one roof, because they have it in one hotel, the ballroom. They separate the ballrooms at the beginning, and then they open up the dividers between them. In Koh Samui, though, we had more people, but we didn't do it under one roof. The only place, there's no hotels that can hold this kind of crowd, 2,000, 2,500 people. So we actually set up a little village, a little Passover village, near the lake. We had 5 tents, each one with a capacity of 500 people, and no air conditioning, so it gets a little hot, but fans. You have to set up mobile restrooms and kitchens and just the logistics of getting the matzah in there and the wine. If you imagine serving 2,500 pieces of fish at the first course. And then we brought in actually a logistics company to figure out how to run a family dinner with 2,500 people without a microphone, because as the holiday comes in, you can't use a microphone. So we took a logistics company from Israel and figured out the choreographing of this.
How did you do it without a microphone? How did you do it? Tell me the truth.
I'll tell you what happened. There was a lineup. It was choreographed. So there were digital clocks, and for each 10 people, we designated a table leader. So many people came with family or friends. Each table had to designate a leader. That leader got a leader's kit, and it was a choreograph. So at 7:06, tell all your table to stand up and hold the first cup of wine in their hand, and we're going to say this blessing. So everybody stands up, 7:06. Doesn't matter where you're up to. 7:11, everybody sit down and then, break the matzah. Whatever it is, everything was, and it worked. What we tried to do is have a family experience in the presence of 2,000 people. So each 10 people table became like their own unit with a family leader. Just like in your own home, you would have the patriarch would lead the Passover dinner. So each table had their, so to speak, proverbial designated patriarch.
And they are talking at the same time. All these people are talking at the same time, the leaders in these tents. Holy smokes.
And there's one leader for each. Each tent has one leader, right? And then there's one leader for all the 5.
I see.
So at some stage, everybody's singing the same song at the same time, because they know the songs, some of the basic songs that everybody knows.
Who would have thought that the largest Seder in the world?
I would have thought Israel.
Is in Nepal.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm still paying the bills from 2 years ago, Seder.
And we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. More with Rabbi Yosef Kantor.
Besides the great work that Rabbi Kantor does for the Jewish community, it was a big deal right after the tsunami, the big tsunami, how Chabad got activated. Rabbi Kantor, maybe you share with us some of your experiences in.
Yeah, I always say about the tsunami, that when I first got to Thailand, I knew I was coming to a very small local Jewish community. When I discovered the Israeli backpackers, I knew, I have a much bigger community now, but it's still limited to the Jewish community. When the tsunami hit, I realized that this was the time to actually step up to the plate and to help the entire population of Thailand, 65, 70 million people, and whatever, of course, whatever we could do. And the Jewish community, international Jewish community, contacted us to help, and through the Chabad houses around the world, there was a fundraising page set up, and monies were sent to us, which we were then able to use in setting up relief programs for the local Thai people, which resulted in something fascinating. We did a day, we call it a World of Kindness celebration. We had a carnival for the Thai orphans in Phuket, those that had suffered from the tsunami. We made like a Luna Park. We gave them a fun day, and we gave out toys that had been sent by Jewish schools around the world. We brought in the chief rabbi of Israel at the time, Rabbi Amar, came dressed in his full regalia, and he gave out the toys to the Thai kids in the name of the Jewish community around the world, which was an amazing show of solidarity. And what we were trying to highlight is that in a world that is sane, not insane, there should be a reaction like that. People around the world should open their hearts and open their pockets and feel compassion for those that have suffered. And so by showing how the kids, so we had kids in America in Jewish schools go with their bubbies and zadis and parents and aunts and uncles and buy toys. They shipped them to Thailand, which doesn't make sense because the toys are made in this part of the world, but it doesn't have to make sense. It was the feeling that they were sending toys. We were giving them out to the kids here who felt that they were getting a gift from people that cared somewhere else in the world, cared enough to send them a toy. We had the chief rabbi of Israel, which was emphasizing the fact that this was something that was beyond, just one person. This was the Jewish community of the world. We then, it got the attention of the royal family. The princess of Thailand lost her autistic son on the beach, not far from Phuket. So she agreed to come a year later to an event we called the Tsunami Yizkar, the Tsunami Memorial, and we opened a picture exhibition of the work we had done. And I presented her at that time a menorah, and I was able to give a little speech that was carried live on all the TV stations in Thailand. I explained the Rebbe's message that fixing the world, repairing the world, transmitting the fact that there's an eye that sees, there's an absolute moral code, which tells us that we're created, that all human beings need to care for each other, the divine image in every human, and sharing this message in the presence of royalty was really an ability. And having this streamed, this wasn't before internet was really a thing. It wasn't streamed. It was actually broadcast on TV throughout Thailand. It was a very, very special moment, which which I hope resonated in a way that made an impact in the country. Yeah. So it was I remember it was an awakening that we have a mission on many, there's many different layers of the mission, to the immediate community, to other levels of community, and to the world at large. We have to be a beacon of light and a voice of morality to remind, especially in our insane world, to remind that there's an eye that sees, an ear that hears. There's an absolute code of morality as given by God to all of us humans.
Wonderful.
Amazing. Very beautiful.
Wonderful.
We're speechless.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing thing. I mean, obviously, to spread goodness and kindness was the message of the Chabad, right? And this is the way you do it. It's an amazing thing when people see that in action.
Can we do a blessing with the rabbi?
Absolutely, yes. All the way from Thailand.
L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim.
Let's say together, Baruch, Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Shehakol Nehiyah Bidvaro.
And I say, bless the rabbis for the great work that you guys are all doing and bringing not only joy, but teachings in such a wonderful, enlightening way to all of us. L'chaim.
Yeah, l'chaim, l'chaim. May God bless each and every one of us and each and every one of those that are watching this to be blessed with a kesiva v'chasim atayv, to be written, inscribed, and sealed for a good year, for a sweet year. And Mashiach should come, and we'll all live in a liberated, fixed, godly world. May that be very soon. Amen.
Amen. L'chaim, l'chaim. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
L'chaim to life. L'chaim to life. L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim to life.
How inspirational was that? We're going to see you again next week. Friends of Chabad. Welcome to the Friends of Chabad. There are 5,000 of them around the world, and we're making it a personal mission to be in touch with each and every one. We're going to do episodes that are going to have rabbis, rebbitzins, dancing, mysticism, Kabbalah, family talk, foods, everything you can think of. Today we're going to travel the world. We're landing somewhere. Follow me. Do you want to introduce our friends from Delaware?
Rabbi and Rebbitzin Vogel, Avremel and Shuli Vogel, are the Chabad representatives at the University of Delaware. And they're going to share with us about what they have going on over there. Unfortunately, just recently, their Chabad house was set on fire. But the positive messaging that we heard from them and the immediate going into the positive, and not only we're going to rebuild, but over the top, has been coming out from there, and I'm literally really glad that they're part of this Farbrengen today.
Hi, all the way in Delaware.
Hello, hello.
Share with us what goes on by you guys on a weekly basis. Of course, I know considering now it's a little bit different, but still.
On a typical, if this would be a normal year, pre-COVID, we would have been having a welcome back barbecue with dozens of students. This weekend, Friday night, would have been our first welcome back Shabbat. This past year, we were hitting averages of 140, 150 kids coming by on a Friday night. And it's been growing every year, so who's to say what this year would have been? But that would have just been the first week, and then kicking it into high gear, moving into Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, moving towards the high holidays.
In the absence of having the Rebbe in body, who gave you the encouragement to take this position? How does it happen?
So my father is Chief Chabad Rabbi. He's the head shliach of the state of Delaware.
Uh-huh.
I grew up in Wilmington, just 20 minutes up the road. And so after my wife and I got married, we lived in Crown Heights for a year. And during that time, we were in touch with my father about if there was a need back in Delaware for us to move down. At that point, actually, the emissary who was here, there was a Chabad on campus presence at the University of Delaware for probably a little over 25 years. And he had something going on, so they had asked for us to come down and take it over. And we had a little bit of a conversation about it. Wasn't exactly what my wife grew up with, but we decided here's the need, and this is what we were going to do.
Good, very good.
How do you work together? What are the duties that are shared between you both?
So you do all the cooking.
Yeah, exactly. I do all the cooking and she gives all the sermons. No, it's mostly hanging out with students. It's making them feel comfortable. A lot of these kids, they're coming from homes. Some of them were part of Jewish youth groups and part of, they had a lot of Judaism in their homes. Some of them didn't, but they also, they need a sense of something to ground them when they're here. It gets a little bit tumultuous out in college. It's the years where college kids are figuring out who they are, who they want to be. So it's giving them that safe space on campus, whether it's to express themselves religiously or just have a family around the corner. They don't have that. So it's just to give them that space to find comfort.
We don't have that. So
Exactly.
It works both ways.
Yeah.
Did you experience difficulty in terms of the idea of anti-Semitism growing in our colleges over the past decades? Do you experience that on a daily basis or no?
Not typically. Delaware in general, we're pretty low key. We like to pride ourselves on that. Not just the university, the state in general. We're pretty chill. There were a couple things, but that's just students on social media. But they were very small things. I mean, especially compared to the stuff that happens on other campuses. But that's not something which is like in Delaware. Those are stuff that happen on social media. For the most part, a very welcoming and accepting community.
Good.
And then all that changed last week.
Yeah.
Still convincing myself that it didn't. But
Yeah, we're in slight denial, but we live right behind on the other side of the block. So every time we look out the kitchen window, saying we see the burnt down Chabad house all boarded up. So we can't really deny it too much. We haven't even really wrapped our heads around it just because we've been focused on, we're about to start the school year and now we don't have a home for these kids. There are a bunch of college students and now we don't have that space for them. What are we going to do? So we've been focused, and our students have been focused on let's see how we can build back and how we can build back better and stronger.
It's interesting. We talk about pro-Semitism. We're talking about all the love for Jews by non-Jews, especially righteous Gentiles. But growing up in America, being Jewish, I never thought about anti-Semitism. And I don't know if I was sheltered or just didn't feel it. But as I got older and started thinking about things and traveling the world, I have began to see the pockets, and I now do realize, I don't know why, but that there is this negativity towards Jews, which I'm surprised. And and especially having gone on this journey that we've been going on and speaking to all of the rabbis from all over the world, all you see is the love, dedication, and goodness that Jews want to do for the world. It's like I said to myself, well, why would it create so much negativity? What is this anger towards Jews when all they're really wanting to do is protect truths, being the Torah, give back, doing good things?
I think that God gave the law through the Jewish people. And somehow people would rather live in Sodom and Gomorrah, many people. And in order to get to Sodom and Gomorrah, you have to go through the Jewish people, the messenger, God's messengers. And that's who they are. And therefore, there's that struggle. It's good and evil. That's the way I look at it. Now, I'm not Jewish, so although I know a lot about Judaism and I really revere all of the works of certainly the Chabad, and I'm a reader of the Bible. But that seems to me something that has to be taken care of. And that's why they talk about the Mashiach. They talk about that time when all of this negativity will be eliminated from the earth and people will experience kindness and goodness throughout the world. And I so admire this organization and all the principles that were brought forth by the Rebbe. And I see you guys out there. I feel so much affection and love for you guys and inspiration for the work that you do. So I'm very honored to spend time getting to know you a little bit and having people see your work.
Pleasure's all ours.
It must be overwhelming that I heard 7,000 people have now joined to help rebuild the Chabad at your university. Although the trauma of what happened last week is obviously devastating, but at the same time, there must be something very beautiful that you're all getting connected to with that.
Yep, 100%. At last count, not that anybody's counting, at last count, there were over 8,500 people who have pitched in, and that's just on the GoFundMe that was launched by our students. I've been getting calls and emails and text messages and Facebook messages. I've barely scraped the surface of them, but there's just tons of outpouring of support just from everywhere, and it's an encouraging message. Saying when you say pro-Semitism, And you have an act like this, and it's very easy for someone to think right away that this was an act of anti-Semitism. It's also important to realize that the response, I think, is much more the identity of America than the actual act. If you see the fact that we have Christian leaders, Catholic leaders, we have the Muslim society over here, who they created their own GoFundMe for us. Everybody's just been pitching in to make this, to make this right, because they all condemn acts like this. They all condemn hate, and they want to see light. They want to see light win, and I think that's the vast majority. I know I can speak for Delaware as a Delawarean, but I think that's really. That's who we are as Americans, and human beings as a whole. Hate and division is not our identity. It's much more love and unity.
Do you have children?
3.
3? That's great.
4, 2, and 1.
Wow, perfect. Yeah.
You got to catch up. They've got about 35 each.
You gotta give them some time. We've only been married 5 years.
Wonderful.
Well, how can people get involved?
First of all, thank you. Whenever anybody has been reaching out, I mean, the message that we've been sharing is one, first of all, positivity, and what's amazing is the way that the students have internalized that message. We thought it would be like a bit of a struggle. Even the Center for Counseling on campus, they reached out to us. If you have students who need to talk, we can work with them. But the students they've really taken this on. They've really internalized this message of always looking for the positive. We're here to bring more goodness and kindness to the world, to bring more light into the world. And someone tried to dampen out that light a little bit, and I guess it's our job of all of humanity that we have to make up for that. We have to make up for that, fivefold, tenfold.
When they try to put it out, it gets bigger.
Exactly. That's what we got to show them. We got to show them that hate never wins. Yes. Darkness never wins. Yes. Light, unity, love, that's what always wins. So just to do another act, another random act of goodness and kindness, just to bring that much more light and compassion into the world, that's something which every person can do. And then there is those who are able to help, on a financial level, to help us build this home back for these students who are now, I don't want to say, use the word homeless, almost seems like a bit of a strong word, but who are now somewhat homeless on this campus. We have put together, it's actually led by students, it's an incredible story in its own. But at udfirerelief.com, that would send you to the GoFundMe page, which is where we're trying to raise the funds to build this home back up for these kids.
Was the Chabad mostly for the kids in school?
You do have a couple grad students or some other people who will come, but I mean, a family has called us up once or twice. I told them, I said, you're more than welcome to come, but I just hope you or your kids aren't going to be overwhelmed coming into a house with 150 college kids. And they said, okay, maybe we should try Wilmington. Maybe we should go somewhere else. But one day, if we build up large enough and there's enough of the demand in this community as well, I mean, every person is meant to be taken care of. So,
should we do a blessing together?
What a wonderful idea!
Yeah. You lead the way.
Well, we'd like to give you a blessing, a bracha, that you should rebuild stronger than you can possibly imagine, and your place, the University of Delaware, will always be associated not with the trauma that you experienced last week, but with the tremendous growth and positivity that you are building. We'll all look there for inspiration and for encouragement to emulate what you're doing, to transform fire into light. L'chaim, l'chaim.
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 L'chaim to life. L'chaim to life. L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim to life. L'chaim to life.
More to come. We'll see you next week. Welcome to the Friends of Chabad. There are 5,000 of them around the world, and we're making it a personal mission to be in touch with each and every one. We're going to do episodes that are going to have rabbis, rebbitzins, dancing, mysticism, Kabbalah, family talk, foods, everything you can think of. Today we're going to travel the world. We're landing somewhere. Follow me. Would you introduce our guest, please?
Well, it's a great honor to have with us one of the legendary emissaries of the Rebbe, Rabbi Shalom Ber Lipsker, who is the Chabad Shaliach, the Rebbe's emissary in Belle Harbor, Florida. And he is very well known around the world for having been the founder at the Rebbe's direction of the Aleph Institute, which provides chaplaincy and social and religious services and programs to those that are imprisoned, as well as to members of our armed services stationed around the world. So that's a little bit of what he's known for.
Well, it's a great honor to be here with you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. And just to give you a little more, to amplify a little bit, particularly the Aleph Institute. So we are official endorsers for the Department of Defense to establish chaplains in all branches of the United States military. Work very closely with them on all levels, and also work with the entire Federal Bureau of Prisons around the country, and approximately an additional 350 state and county jails that work with their inmates and their families, and of course also working very strongly in advocacy in trying to transform a little bit of the criminal justice environment in our country that needs a real update from the last 200 years, when it has not been changed except for some air conditioning and some of what I call human zoos.
Wow. It's very, very important. This idea of the chaplains in the World War II, or that's when I grew up, it seems to have lost some of the force, but this is very hopeful to me to hear that you're working very closely with government to get religious services to the military, and to reform the prison system. This is very important work.
We've had some very close relationships with some of the chiefs, both in the Pentagon and generals. Just to quote one general, his name was Shachnow, interestingly, a Holocaust survivor who was found in the dirt of one of the concentration camps after they liberated it, and then sent to America by the military because he had nobody left in his family. And they raised him, and he turned into a 3-star general who headed up the Special Services Marines. So General Shachnow said to the military, said to the chaplains, he said, there's a pecking order in the military where, a private, he speaks to maybe the sergeant, possibly lieutenant, sometimes captain, but rarely gets to speak to a general. I mean, that's a very unusual circumstance. He says the only way that which they really go the roundabout and they go beyond the general pecking order is the chaplaincy. The chaplain has direct contact with the general because they recognize the necessity for moral turpitude and strength and a spiritual reality that's critical, especially in a military environment, when all of a sudden you're facing life and death situations on a daily basis. So chaplaincy has become a very important factor, and the top level people are recognizing that and are talking about it in a very, very old way.
We're back, and we're in a new location.
Rabbi Lipsker, would you share with us the Rebbe's interaction with you regarding your efforts in Aleph?
I interacted with the Rebbe on it. The Rebbe was extremely encouraging and pushed me along in the path. And in fact, after that meeting in 1981, I believe almost every single time that I interacted with the Rebbe, whether it's coming by the Rebbe for $1 or other instances, about 90% of the time, the Rebbe would reference the Aleph Institute. The Rebbe's perspective was a very simple one, which is that every single human being is a valuable person. There's no such person that is of no value because God created him for a reason. So the general perspective of life is dictated by the manufacturer of the person. Like, when you come to fix your car, If you have an expensive automobile, expensive watch, you're not going to take your Rolex to a guy that's tinkering around in his garage and how to fix clocks. You want to go to the guy that produced it. So God who produced us knows how we function, our internal, external element, gave us the best self-help book that exists in the universe. So in the Torah, every single punishment is mentioned. You have capital punishment, you have corporal punishment, you have financial punishments, but you don't have prison. Prison is not considered a moral, ethical way in which to deal with a human being. It's an inhuman way of dealing with people. And the Rebbe addressed that publicly one night. Just to give you a little example, we were having a late night meeting and we had to travel back to Miami early in the morning. And we decided that before we went to the airport, because meetings were in the city, in Manhattan, we're going to ride by 770 because we could not ride by 770 on the way home. So we were in a taxi driver, and he was taking myself and the few people that were with me. And we were driving by, and all you saw on the street at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, were garbage trucks rumbling along. You saw some bakery trucks coming to deliver the bakery, milk trucks. All lights were closed, all building lights, everything was closed. The city was shut down. You rode by 770, and the Rebbe's windows had light in them. And we said to ourselves, this is the world's babysitter. When everybody's sleeping, he's awake and he's watching us. So the Rebbe is the world's babysitter in a certain way. And there's nobody that cares about those guys in prison. Nobody that cared about them. Because they had no benefit from our social perspective to society. But to the Rebbe, they were as much God's child as you and I. So that's what the Rebbe's disposition is.
Wow. Welcome back. More with Rabbi Lipsker.
Every single thing in our society has advanced exponentially, which means if you have a doctor that's still practicing medicine according to his 1960 manual, he's out of business. The only thing that's maintained itself is prison. And they're literally warehousing human beings like boxes in a warehouse. And people who've come in there and have watched this, I have a friend of mine who was a partner at Arthur Anderson. When he said he went into a prison for the first time, he says he had to leave because he couldn't handle it. He says it was human beings like monkeys with their hands hanging out of the bars, just looking and watching people walk by. You're talking about people with a mind, with a heart, with a family. Now, there are circumstances where a person is a danger to society, a violent human being, and therefore you have to kind of control him. That's a different aspect. But the Rebbe saw it immediately. He said every human being is made in the image of God, and you cannot mistreat them, which means you can correct a human being. You know, they're called departments of corrections. It's a misnomer. It's a fake. There's no corrections going on in these environments. In the end of the 1980s, there are 5 elements in the federal rules on incarceration, and they include incapacitation, protection of society, retribution, restitution, and rehabilitation. They took rehabilitation out, no budget. So you take human beings, smart people, intelligent people, you stick them into a space that's 4x4, living on a 1-inch piece of mattress on a concrete sticking out of the wall. Can you imagine the kind of pain that goes on under those circumstances? The ancillary damage that's taking place in terms of cost to society, psychological costs for children. These children growing up, they're not healthy anymore when they're in prison. 1 in 8 kids has someone that's involved in prison. Our country has more people in prison than any other country in the world. Wow. More women by a long shot than any other country in the world. There's some movement. We've been very much involved in the First Step Act. We've been very much involved in DC. In fact, I've just set up a meeting with the AG, with the Attorney General, because he's a God-understanding human being and he understands these matters. But we can tell you because we're in the trenches. I've been to more prisons. When I come in front of a judge and talk on behalf of somebody, I will look in his eyes and I will tell him, listen, Your Honor, I respect you a lot, but you haven't been there. I think every single federal judge or state judge that send someone to prison should visit a prison and stay there for a while and find out where he's sending that person. Because, you know, when you're sitting up there in the pearly chambers on top, sitting up there with your robes on and sending a guy away for 20 years, and there's mourning in the room, and the prosecutors are dancing for joy because they just got a great result, more years, the better result. It's an area that really needs adjustment and radical.
A lot more work to be done.
Rabbi Lipsker, amongst everything else that he's involved in, is very passionate about one of the Rebbe's great, most important campaigns, and that is to bring the light of Torah through the 7 Noahide laws to the whole world. And John is very active in that. So I just wanted, maybe we can take a moment to talk about.
Well, yeah, I'm very interested. I'm very interested in that because the 7 Noahide laws, we have access because of our work in the prison environment and the work in the military, and because Jewish chaplains in the military have to address also the general population. They don't have a Jewish chaplain, a Catholic chaplain. They do have different religions, but the Catholic chaplain has to deal with the Jews as well because they only send one chaplain to the front line. They don't send 12 chaplains. So we're dealing a tremendous amount with the general population as well. And Maimonides says clearly that one of the responsibilities of the Jew is to teach the regular laws of life, morals, and ethics, which are included in the 7 Noahide laws. You know, if someone like myself promotes the 7 Noahide laws, there are many in the non-Jewish environment, particularly in Christian Catholic spaces, where they would seem that a little bit uncomfortable, saying, hey, what are these Jews trying to do, take over our religion or something? But when these Noahide laws will come from someone who is not formally Jewish, like yourself, it's a much greater impact. And it can be much easier access. And the Rebbe, I think, pushed that concept. He felt that it should be, even though it should be, we can participate, but our participation should be a little bit more in the background rather than in front of the program.
I understand, and I remember that call when the Rebbe told me, he asked me to speak about the Noahide laws through the telethon. And I remember very vividly that conversation that I had with him. And I think you're right. I think he understood. He didn't say it to the other the rabbis who were there. He said it to me specifically because he felt that it would get forth in another way and maybe have more impact.
Living a life of justice in recognition of one supreme being, living a life of morality where there is no murder, robbery, or cruelty to all God's creatures, represent a message for all mankind. And if all men would understand the beauty of that message, we would all be in a harmonious tune, and all dances relating to all different cultures would be easy for all of us to dance to.
I'm not only participating in this as part of the Verbringen, but I've been a victim of their focus and pushing me further and further, just like all you guys do. You all push yourselves further and further, and to do more good, and they're pushing me, so I'm receptive.
And we'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back. More with Rabbi Lipsker.
I heard a very moving story about a visit to the Rebbe's Verbringen that you brought some prison. Could you share that story? I never heard it from Rabbi Lipsker himself, so this would be wonderful.
Well, during the early periods, they gave us permission to take men out. We didn't have enough rabbis to address people in prison. And there were people in prisons in places like Atuda, New Mexico, where there's no Jewish community within driving distance. And so we needed a place and they had Jewish men and women there. And we needed someone to train them how to conduct themselves. They wanted to have some spirituality. So we talked to the government and they gave us permission to take out approximately 20 people at a time to train them for 2 weeks in how to conduct Jewish services in prisons. And that would be very helpful. So during that period of time, we took out these men and we would bring them. We had a retreat center. So when we did it in the New York vicinity, sometimes New York, sometimes New Jersey, sometimes the mountains, but we got a camp off season, And we took these men there for training. We would bring into the Rebbe for the Farbrengen. And in order for them to sit, and I don't know if you've been at a Farbrengen like that, but when you wanted to have a Farbrengen, have a seat at 1:30 when the Rebbe comes out, you got to be there since 7 o'clock in the morning, unless you have a permanent seat. Wow. Because there's no microphone. So there's thousands of people literally cramming in and wanting to hear what the Rebbe has to say. So we had 20 young rabbinic students who we put around a couple of tables to sit there so these guys could go back and have lunch, because they weren't used to coming to synagogue in the morning to staying until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, with a little bit of wine and some kind of a cookie. So we had to send them back to have some lunch. So we needed a place for them. So we had these people sit around. It was 1:30 in the afternoon, and the Rebbe was about to come down. And the Rebbe would come down on the clock. You could almost get him on the second. 1:30, when the second hand hit the 12, the Rebbe was through the door. So you can ask anybody, will tell you that. It was precise. And everything the Rebbe did was precise. So at 1:30, the Rebbe's secretary comes down. He's looking for me, and I'm on the other side of the room. And there's no place you could walk. I was literally floating over people's heads to get to him because he wanted to talk to me. And he says to me two things. He says, first of all, he said, the Rebbe is coming down in a few minutes. And he wants to make sure that the men that are here from the prisons do not sit together. Because if they all sat together, they're all clean shaven, and most of the people there had beards and looked differently. People would ask, who are they? And they would have to identify them, and in case they might get embarrassed, to sit them around the room in different places. That was number one. Number two, the Rebbe at that time, after the Farbrengen, he would give like a bottle of vodka or wine to various people who came for a certain reason. They had a dinner that week, or they had a special occasion. And so the Rebbe, they would bring down many bottles of wine that the people would bring, and the Rebbe would give it to them, pour a little bit into his own cup, and then pour into their cup, and they would then take that bottle back to their source. So the secretary said to me that these men deserve, the Rebbe said to tell me that these men deserve a bottle of whatever he was giving more than anybody else in the room. But the reason he was not going to give it to them is also not to point them out so as not to embarrass them. And then the Rebbe gave a talk, a public talk for about an hour. He gave a talk. The talk that afternoon was about 4.5 hours. But out of the 4.5 hours, it was an hour-and-a-half talk. That talk was divided into two. The first half was the most sophisticated talk that I've heard the Rebbe give on the first chapter of the book of Ezekiel, which is the toughest chapters. It's called it's the vision of Ezekiel, the toughest chapter in prophets. Maimonides refers to it as the act of the chariot. And he discussed it in terms, and then he talked about the rabbis who were there, because it was a period of time when rabbis are able to come to 770. Rabbis can't come during a Passover because they have to deal with their own communities. So the Rebbe gave a talk to the rabbis, and he said to the rabbis, you guys shouldn't be sitting on your laurels just because you got your ordination 15 years ago. You're kind of figuring that can take you for the rest of your life. You got to restudy the stuff and know it again and learn it one more time. It was like, really laid it out to them. And then the second half of the talk was to the prisons, and he lifted them up. And he said the reason he goes to prison is because God has given him a special power that even in the darkest spaces, he can bring some light. So when we explained that to these guys, they said, we can't believe it. This is a rabbi knocking at rabbis and he's lifting prisoners. They couldn't believe it, but that was the Rebbe. Wow. So this is, the reason, the kind of Farbrengen that I'm used to is when they say a little l'chaim.
Funny you should mention it. John came prepared. John brought these special glasses just for that moment.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. Thank you for all your wonderful work, and may the blessings that you have given us, maybe I know they're being received by all these people who have been suffering so much for an absence of light, and I know that you bring it. So thank you for that. God bless you.
All of us are a source of light. And a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. You can't curse the darkness or get rid of it. You got to open the light.
Yep.
That's all you got to do.
Hi. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
L'chaim, to life. To life, to life. L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim, to life. To life. Hey!
More to come. We'll see you next week. Welcome to the Friends of Chabad. There are 5,000 of them around the world, and we're making it a personal mission to be in touch with each and every one. We're going to do episodes that are going to have rabbis, rebbitzins, dancing, mysticism, Kabbalah, family talk, foods, everything you can think of. Today we're going to travel the world. We're landing somewhere. Follow me. Shall we introduce our friend in France?
Well, Steve, you go back with Levi many years with your father and your mother and your birthday parties in the south of France.
Yes.
Rabbi Levi Matasov is the Chabad emissary to the European Union. So we're very much looking forward to this Farbrengen.
So Levi, we have gotten to see each other during the Cannes Film Festival that I usually attend once a year, and it happens to fall during the time of my birthday, which is May 16th. So we would see each other for my birthday there, and also during a Shabbat service. But you live in Paris, and then you happen to come to Cannes during that time period? What happens?
Actually, my parents live in Cannes. So I was joining as the unofficial title of the rabbi of the festival. And then I just crashed into your birthday, and we decided that from Thursday night, we'll move on to Shabbat dinners. In between, we put on tefillin on Friday morning with your father.
Yes.
Hank and your mother, Dorothy.
Yes.
She was lighting the Shabbos candles.
Yes.
We were not doing it. But, that's the privilege the women have.
Yes. So how long have you been in France? You weren't born there, were you?
I was born in France. Actually, let's go back a little bit further and take just a little step to the origins. My father's parents were the first Chabad emissaries. 1950, after the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe's passing in New York, my grandfather was in France, in Marseille, in south of France, and immediately within the Shiva, the 7 days of mourning of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, January 1950, my grandfather gets instructed by the Rebbe, gets a letter to say, my father-in-law, one of the last instructions he gave me was that you should go to Morocco. So my grandfather, after having spent 9 years in Gulag, in Soviet Union, because he was a rabbinical yeshiva student, just packed his bags, changed his plans. Instead of moving to Israel and study Torah, he just went to a Muslim country, didn't speak the language, didn't know the culture, had lost his entire family in the Holocaust, and went on to a life mission. The one to bring light into this world and make a little bit of a difference. From that emanates the 5,000 emissaries that we have today. My grandfather, I'm privileged to be his grandson, was the first one to Morocco. My mother's parents had a similar story also. After going out of Russia and arriving in Paris in the late 40s, they were a little bit of time in Morocco, and then they were sent to Tunisia in 1960. Some 10, 15 years later, they married their children, the Moroccan and the Tunisian Russian immigrants, and I'm the proud product of that. They lived in France. Since 1989, they are in Cannes, in south of France, with a beautiful Jewish community and a school and dozens of restaurants and activities. So my youth, I spent some time there. We all like to spend time in Cannes in our youth. And at some point, instead of being the rabbi of the film festival, they appointed me the rabbi of the European Parliament. And for the past 20 years, I'm based out of Brussels, doing activities for trying to do good, bring light into the nations, and do good for Europe, for the Jews of Europe.
Tell us about France and the Jewish connection.
I will tell you something. I remember when they started the first Cannes Israeli festival, they did it on the top of the Noga Hilton. I don't know if you remember that time.
Yes.
I don't remember which actress was it. You for sure remember. But I remember that she asked us to dance because the night before we were doing the claquette, the feet, like jumping. Our feet were jumping. I don't know why you call it claquette. I think it's like a Russian dance that we were doing together. And I remember that episode, it's something that marked my life, is that there was an Israeli journalist there. And he asked me, Rabbi, how can you be here in Cannes? Look what's going on just in front of us. There's the beach, there's the Cannes Festival, and I'm not going to expand and everybody could use their imagination. You've seen it yourself. He says, how could you look at that? And I said, well, that's the view that you have from the roof on one hand. Just let's turn around. And you see the third building over there? That's the Chabad house. That's for me the source of Cannes. When I come to Cannes, that's what I look at. So, the streets of Paris, they're beautiful. We could see them on postcards. And our role, what the Rebbe taught us, is to bring, as in the temple, in the Beit HaMikdash, where the windows were narrow inside and wide to the outside, to bring the light and the warmth that we have within us, to bring it to the out. So Paris, the culture, the art of Paris is fantastic. But we have to bring that revolution, to turn it around, as the Rebbe himself lived in France, lived in south of France. The Rebbe lived in Nice, 1940, 41, before he arrived in the United States. And the Rebbe said himself, when I was in Paris, I planted the seeds. And he told later the Chabad emissaries that arrived in Paris in 1968, he told them, now you have to, what I've cultivated, now you have to take it and grow it and use it. So this is what we're trying to do. This is the life of Jewish life in France. Actually, the song of the national anthem of France, La Marseillaise, la 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 la. In 1974, Simchat 1973, October 1973, Simchat Torah, in the middle of 770, you've been there. The great synagogue of the Rebbe, Rabbi Kunin's father was there. Maybe Chaim also was there with his brothers. And all of a sudden, the Rebbe started to sing that song with words of the Torah, with words of the prayer. Nobody knew what's going on, and there was a group of French people. My father was there, actually, a brother French group from Paris. And some of this is the Rebbe singing La Marseillaise. And the guy says, come on, it's impossible. And yes, the Rebbe took the tune and put it words of the prayer. And the Rebbe later explained. He says, France has this tremendous klipa. How do you translate that, Chaim?
Potential for negativity.
And let's transform that into positivity, into the good. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's what you're doing. We're all doing it together. Just you have it a little bit easier in California because you have the Cunin.
Welcome back. More with Rabbi Levy. How many Jews are there in France?
600,000 Jews are in France.
More than I thought.
I live in Brussels, and there's on the coast of Belgium, there's a little city called Knock. Where people go in the summer. That's the only city actually on the coast, the only main city on the coast. And especially the religious Jews from Antwerp, they go there and they move there for the entire month of August. And one time I met somebody in Belgium and asked me, how many Jews are there in Belgium? So how many do you think? He says, well, if in little city of Knock, there is 10,000, Brussels, which the population is 10 times more, must be 100,000. And Antwerp, where all these guys with the payas and their hats, must be, at least 500,000 people in Jews. Well, there are 40,000 Jews in Belgium, But sometimes we make a little bit more noise. But, of course, the quantity, France has the largest Jewish community in the European Union. After, of course, Russia, but the largest Jewish community and vibrant Jewish community in France. There was a gentleman, which I will not name, it is a mayor of a very large city in the United States, with probably the biggest Jewish population, was in Paris after the terrorist attacks where Jewish people were killed, and he came to bring solidarity. And I remember we were sitting in the office of the mayor of Paris just before lunch. The mayor of that big city says, I'm going to invite you. And the mayor of Paris says, well, you're my town, you're my host. Yeah, I'm the host, I have to invite you. And they turn to me and they says, which has the most Jewish population? Of course, New York has more than Paris. But which are more kosher restaurants? You'll be surprised. Paris City has more kosher restaurants than New York.
Wouldn't expect that.
So that shows a little bit about the Jewish life of France.
So we've been talking about pro-Semitism, but do you feel anti-Semitism? Do you walk around and feel that there's, whatever, hostilities towards you or angers or?
Let me take you back to a little episode that took place 18 years ago when anti-Semitism was very strong in France. And there was a bunch of people from Los Angeles that put an ad in one of the major newspapers boycotting the Cannes Film Festival. And I remember a call I got from you, I think maybe came from John, and said, why should we boycott the Cannes Film Festival because anti-Semitism? Let's go there and let's do something major. This struck me because this is what the Rebbe has taught us. People fight anti-Semitism with slogans, with boycotts, with demonstrations, with condemnations, with all bunch of things to fight it. The Rebbe has taught us, we're not going to fight darkness with darkness. We're going to fight darkness by adding a little bit of light. It's not by screaming, oh, there is a wolf, it's dangerous. That's on the opposite. Let's walk as proud Jews, of course, in safety and security. But let's be proud, not just of our heritage, but of our present, of our children, of our education, of our social, cultural, family life, of our celebrations. Let's celebrate Judaism.
So there's some questions that I've had that I've been wanting to ask you. Beards. I noticed that all of the rabbis have beards, and it looks like you never shave the beard.
Jeez, I never noticed that.
and I'm wondering what the significance of that is.
We're the first hipsters. We're Hasid
first
hipsters.
hipsters?
Absolutely.
You mean
today it's all hip to have a beard,
yeah.
right? But actually, the beard.
By the way, I never dreamt growing up, seeing my father with his beard, and as mine started to come in, I never dreamt that it would ever be popular to walk around with a beard.
That's right. But everything about our beings, how we were created, is something that is obviously coming from above. There's a reason why men have naturally beards and women don't. And it has to do, so we talked about in the past and we touched upon how as teachings of mysticism, we're always meant to kind of look behind the scenes to try to understand deeper what's going on. And actually in mysticism, there's a conversation about the significance of the beard. An idea of it is that it actually reflects something called divine mercy. And that's why we embrace the idea of a beard. But everything about us represents something that's bigger than the way in which it occurs in us. Hearing is much bigger than hearing out of your ears. Seeing, there's seeing that's much greater than what our eyes see. But the experience of seeing occurs in our eyes. So if we could think of the entire human anatomy as a reflection of something that's bigger than the way we first initially see it, it's easier to get present to how there's something like energy, etc.
And we spoke about everything coming to the source. I think it must have been about 40 years ago, John, there was a movie called Coming Home. And there you had a beard.
Yeah, what happened?
Who took it away from you?
I know.
Yeah.
Because, when we meet somebody, I was always taught, you have to find out who the person is. And I typed Rabbi John Voight on Google. And it came out with that movie, with that picture.
That's funny.
So everything is regarding the source. And the beard, in fact, is the source actually connected to the month of Elul, which is when the God's 13 attributes of mercy are shining. And where do we find those 13 attributes of mercy? We find them in the beard, according to Kabbalah. That's coming home. That brings us back closer to our home, reminds us how we could be stronger connected. But of course, there's many ways to be connected.
It must be noted that the origin of maintaining a beard is because there's a biblical command to not cut the corners of one's face. Now, there are differing halachic opinions if that allows for shaving, if it's not using a close razor or not. And then there's the inner dimension and the beauty behind the beard that they were touching upon. But I didn't want to not mention the actual fact that it's written in the Torah about not cutting.
One more thing about the beard, which is, I remember growing up in yeshiva, it was a little weird when I first saw it, that I would see in people's private holy books, there was a piece of their beard. And I asked them, what's going on? And they said, you're not supposed to just disregard it. It's that holy. There's something holy about it.
But it's even more than that. That's what they told me in France. But it says that actually when Mashiach will come, those pieces of hair, since they are holy and they are in the books of holy books, they will become gold.
Aha! Start collecting the hair.
Don't you touch that dial. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. More with Rabbi Levy. Now tell us about the hats.
The hat.
The hats.
One of the aspects of the hat is the idea of a crown. Not in a, God forbid, to be taken in a way that feeds one's ego, but actually thinking about God's crown. And the more we're present to the fact that everything is part of God's crown, the better we occur in who we are.
So the hat and the yarmulke are two different things.
Well, the idea of covering one's head is behind both the yarmulke and the hat. Some customs have different hats, some of them have fur hats, and each, it's more of a sign of the place of where that community came from. In the Chabad tradition, the hats actually came to be by the Rebbe himself, because prior to the Rebbe, previous generations of Chabad, they didn't wear.
It's the Frank
hats.
Sinatra look.
Pretty much. we like him.
So I got a couple more questions for French Levy, but before I go there, this Levy here has had this piece of paper or something on his hand. I don't know what's going on with it, but what's with the tape on the hand?
No, just to clarify, so I asked you, I said, just remember when you see it, remind me, I want to tell you something.
Okay.
Outside of the wall, right outside of this room, there are a few words over there, which in those few words are actually a much bigger message that an unbelievable occurrence happened with the one who began the Hasidic movement, the Holy Baal Shem Tov. And in the year 1747, he had written to his brother-in-law a letter that would only become published later on that others would know about. And part of the letter, which he talks about something called a soul's ascent that he makes on Rosh Hashanah. Don't try it alone. And he enters into the higher realms and he has an encounter with the Mashiach, with the Messiah. And it's a wonderful letter, which is something that, it's worthwhile to read it again and again. But in that encounter, the letter writes, and I asked the mouth of the Messiah, when will the Master come? And the Messiah answered the Baal Shem Tov. He said, when your teachings, when your fountains of wisdom will overflow to the outside, and others will be able to make a connection between heaven and earth as you do in simplicity, then will be the time. Now the Baal Shem Tov at the time was unknown. And it was a moment of melancholy. Something like that means that Mashiach wasn't coming for a long time. But in that teaching, he shares with us at the end of the letter that even though there's certain things I can't share with you, I've been shown there could be a transformation of mankind within seconds in terms of the way we are. But by us being present with the fact that we have a gift to talk, and we have a gift to use our words in a powerful way where we can generate and create positive energy, and by being present to what happens when we speak and we create worlds, worlds means defined by realms, then in so doing, we get to invite that time into the world. And that dream that the Baal Shem Tov had is manifesting. That the Baal Shem Tov's teachings get to be shared, no boundaries. Thank you.
What's the sign say?
When your wellsprings will spread to the outside.
Yeah.
That's the quote.
Wow.
When your wellsprings will spread to the outside.
Well, it's very providential that you asked him this question while we have one of the Rebbe's emissaries in France on the phone and on the line. Why do I say that? Because the Hebrew word for France is Tsarfas. That's how you spell it. Tzadik, Resh, Pei, Saf. The Hebrew word for this word of spreading forth, sprouting forth, actually originates in the Bible, in the Torah, where God blesses Jacob that Uparatzta, you shall spread forth, the same word, to all sides of the earth with your children and your message.
Wow.
The Rebbe pointed out to the fact that the country name Tsarfas has the exact same letters as that word of spreading out to the world. And on many occasions, the Rebbe made a point of talking about the unique importance of the emissaries and the Jewish communities in France, because France, the Rebbe said, amongst many things, maybe Levi can elaborate a bit more, but the Rebbe said how Tzarfas, the country of France, has a spiritual and cultural impact that's felt throughout the world, and therefore it has the same potential in the spiritual realm to impact in a positive way all of God's children around the world. And the Rebbe always made that connection, that Tzarfas is Paratzta. This country called France has a biblical charge and the potential to uplift and spread forth the message and love of Torah to the entire world.
Oh.
I'll add to that the Rebbe himself actually mentioned. It's brought down that every letter in Hebrew has a numerical value. So Aleph would be 1, Yud would be 10, and Taf is 400, the last letter. The numerical value of Tzarfat, which is a Sfarasta, is none other than 770.
Wow. Wow. Do you know what that is? That's the address for
Headquarters.
Chabad headquarters.
And this building is a replica of 770. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nothing is by chance.
Does that mean we get to say L'chaim?
Yes, L'chaim.
Yes, L'chaim, L'chaim. Well, great work, Reb Levi.
May we're always able to celebrate, but not just to bring together, but there should be an outcome from it. That's whatever we can do should have an impact on others. You are all 4 people that could impact a lot of people's life. Let's make this difference more than we have done it in the year before. That should be in such an intense way that it should reach the ultimate goal of God's creation, as Rabbi Levi has just mentioned, that the wellsprings of Hasidus should be spread. That will be ultimately when Mashiach will come, and we read that not just speedily nowadays, but immediately now. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
I will say Hagafen on some French wine.
Amen.
L'chaim to life. L'chaim to life. L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim to life. L'chaim to life.
More to come. We'll see you next week. Welcome to the Friends of Chabad. There are 5,000 of them around the world, and we're making it a personal mission to be in touch with each and every one. We're going to do episodes that are going to have rabbis, rebbitzins, dancing, mysticism, Kabbalah, family talk, foods, everything you can think of. Another inspirational episode. Get ready. 1, 2, 3.
We have the great honor to have on our little stage here the father of Levi and Chaim, the great emissary of the Rebbe to Los Angeles and California. This is Rabbi Kunin, the Rabbi Kunin.
But you see, you have to understand one thing. I'm a 3rd generation American, as you can see, right? Born in the Bronx, New York. My father was born in Manhattan.
Me too, the Bronx.
Where were you in the Bronx?
We were born in the South Bronx. Born.
Come on, I was in the West Bronx. What are you talking about, the South Bronx? We lived in the West Bronx, across the street from PS 114, a few blocks from the Yankel Stadium.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it is. So since I was 11, the Rebbe's been my life.
Did you meet him in the Bronx?
No. I came to Brooklyn to meet him. 770 Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn, New York. So we went to see the Rebbe in his room. I was 11, my brother was 12. And the Rebbe was like a father to my mother. And the Rebbe looks at us and said, you know, these 2 wonderful young boys should go to the Chabad Lubavitch Yeshiva. Bedford and Dean. And my mother gets all teary-eyed and says, but Rebbe, they're my own two children. They're like my own eyes. How can I live a week without seeing them? Now listen, here's the Lubavitcher Rebbe, people waiting outside to see him. And Rebbe takes the time to explain to my mother. They were going to go to school on Sunday. So they will have been at home Friday afternoon, Shabbat, and Sunday morning. So 3 days you will have been together with them. Then you have Monday, Tuesday. Tuesday you can come to visit them. So now you will have only missed seeing them on Monday. Then you have Wednesday, Thursday, but they're coming home on Friday. So it's going to be okay. That's how it started out. First time I saw the Rebbe. And then when it came to my bar mitzvah, the bar mitzvah was the day of Chai Elul. So the Rebbe says Chai Elul is a day of light, of warmth, a day of power. You should do everything you have to do to be a warm, lively Jew. That was my marching orders. Then I got a letter from the Rebbe from my bar mitzvah restating the same story. So that's how my relationship with the Rebbe began. The Rebbe sent us in 1965. Go west, young man. That's what the Rebbe. Go west. You'll take the entire West Coast. I went with my bride. We drove up and down the whole coast. Because the Rebbe said, this is yours. What the Rebbe says he means. He doesn't in any way play on words.
How old were you?
How old was I? 25.
You're 25.
Well, I'm only 18 now, but that works that way. So then, it was the years of the hippies. They were the best, the most beautiful people. And you got to remember, the hippies were searching. So they would come to their rabbi and one of the temples. Say, Rabbi, I'd like to talk to you about God. The rabbi says, I never think about him. I'm worried about the sisterhood, the men's club, and how much the tickets are going to be sold for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so I can get paid. God, you want to talk about? Come on, you have long hair, you smell, you haven't had a bath in 6 months, get out of my office. Versus Rabbi Kuhn. They were crazy, and I'm crazy. So it works just fine. Who else would come to California with the Rebbe's blessings and set out to liberate the whole West Coast? How do you do it?
There was no Chabads anywhere in all of us? And there
Whole
were,
West Coast, nothing.
They were in New York?
In New York, correct. New York and other states as well. All things that the previous Rebbe sent. The Rebbe, his personal emissaries, was Rabbi Shem Tov in Philadelphia, Rabbi Shem Tov in Detroit, Rabbi Korf in Miami, Rabbi Feller in Minnesota, and I was the fifth. That was me.
Yeah.
And what people would say then, ha, you're going to go to California? You'll be there for about a week. They'll chew you up and spit you out. That's what people said. How are you going to handle Hollywood? I mean Hollywood. How are we going to handle that? You're not going to be able to handle that. Okay. So now, I'm invited to speak. We get a call. Hi, it's from Temple, blah, blah. Rabbi, do you speak English? I said, I speak a little bit. Why should I disappoint them? I speak a little bit. Oh. Well, we had the Sioux Indians scheduled to come this Sunday because they're a dying breed. And you're a dying breed.
Oh, God.
Would you be willing to come to talk to the kids? Confirmation class, Big Reform Temple. Of course. I pack a little suitcase like the lawyers carry with tefillin, and I get ready to come to the temple. I come to the temple. Who's waiting to greet me? The janitor. Not the rabbi, he's too busy. The janitor brings me in. Big, tall rabbi comes in, doesn't give me a handshake, and he says, You see children, 50 kids in a big, gigantic classroom, confirmation class. Take a good look at this man. I don't know how much English he speaks, but he's a dying breed. Most of them got killed in the Holocaust. Then the communists did away with the rest of them. So take a good look at him, because he's going to be gone soon. Rabbi,
Wow.
do you know enough English to speak to the people? And all of this, he says, with a German accent. I looked up at him, 25 years old. He must have been 50. Rabbi, I speak a better English than you. Because you speak English with a Hamburg accent. I speak English with an accent from the Bronx. And before you know it, I took off my black coat and putting on tefillin with the boys and explaining what tefillin are. It's Jewish internet connection to God. One is on your arm.
And they liked your personality.
Of course. We got along very well. In walks storms in the rabbi. He looks at the kids with the tefillin on their head. He says, "What is this?" I said, "You should know you're a rabbi. It's a pair of tefillin. You will come to my office." I said, "When I'm finished, I'll come." A wonderful time. Then I go to his office. Fumes coming out of his ears. Smoke from the nose. "How dare you?" I said, hey. Hold on a second. You're asking me, how dare I? How dare you? How dare you not come to greet me when I come? You send the janitor to greet me? Shame on you. By the time I was finished with him, he became one of my biggest supporters. I came back to that temple many, many times to lecture.
Is this something else? We're going to take a short break. Welcome back to more Friends of Chabad.
When the Rebbe said in 1965 that we should go to California, there was no Lubavitcher shul, no Chabad shul, or anything else like that here. So you got to start thinking. I'm a man of action. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Have a shul. Chabad synagogue, wow. Go to the Rebbe, walk into the Rebbe says, a shul? Synagogue? How's it going to support itself? Down. Now you have to understand, the Rebbe is my father, he still is today. Rebbe holds my hand today. Many years after that first time I saw him when I was 11. So you have to understand. The Rebbe gives you an answer, and he says how it's going to support itself. You know, the answer is he doesn't want that, he wants something else. But he's giving you a rationale, not to burn your fuses. He's giving you a rationale. Okay. Next thing comes up. There was a swim school for sale. I got a great idea, which is good even today. Why not make a Talmud Torah, a study group for boys and girls separately, but it'll be swim and learn. And this time I go to Marv Goldsmith, may God bless his soul, be alive and well. My dear friend, who was a great lawyer, worked in the Attorney General's office here in California, was also a real estate agent. So I come to him this time. Marvin laid out a whole scale, how all of these things work. The tuition will bring in X amount of dollars. There will be no loss. Great. No loss, no financial loss. Boy, I don't know what that was after all this, so many years since 1965. But it was much of that. So the Rebbe looks up, goes through the papers. The Rebbe would scroll them on his hand, looks through the papers, and says, Shleimer, what's that mizagim? What are people going to say? A young person comes to California. Soon as he comes, he buys a place for $100,000. No good. 2 down. Now comes the hippies. So now I'm invited to speak at UCLA, to come and speak to the kids, and the crowds got bigger and bigger. Now we're having them come to our home, introduce them to what Shabbat was about. Then have them come to the synagogue. You got to remember, these were kids. You could smell them before you could see them. Well, they came to this beautiful synagogue. Rabbi Ginsburg, God bless his soul, Holocaust survivor from Baku in Europe. I brought these kids into the school, into the shul. The other people looked and said, why is he bringing this garbage to our synagogue? Rabbi Ginsburg, Holocaust survivor, God bless his soul, he said, leave him alone. He knows what he's doing. Just leave him alone. But now this is getting out of hand, you understand. And the landlord already says to me, you're always paying me late. If you could pay me $125 a month. It's a lot of money when you don't have it. So the landlord comes in, he says, you know something? I think it's time for you to move. I said, I haven't got money to move. And I have no place to move. I will take care of it for you. And a block away, at Spalding Avenue, he talked to the wonderful owner, who was also a Holocaust survivor, actually, and they rented us a house. But this was getting bigger and bigger. So finally, one time, I said, you know what, I've been to Hill so many times, a lot of kids going to UCLA. So I said, we'll get no money in the pocket, right? We'll take Rabbi Levitansky, may he rest in peace, Rabbi Kurtzman, who worked with me in the summer, day camp. And we go in this big green army truck that would pull a mobile unit of mine, mobile classroom, 35 feet long.
Mitzvah tank.
That's correct. We had the first mitzvah tank, the one in New York I helped make happen, and the second one was here in California. And I say, let's go to UCLA, we have to find the building. Driving down, I see they're putting up a sign with a number where to call. There was no mobile phones then. So I write down the number. I say, let's go and let's call the broker. Now remember, we're going to buy a building now. Not worried about money. Never worried about money.
Of course not.
If you have a budget and you're short, you have a problem. If you have no money, no budget.
Exactly.
No problem at all.
Exactly.
So I call up the broker, goes straight to a voicemail, leave a message. And I'm pretty good with real estate, on the good understanding. I figured out in my own mind, it's got to be $2,250,000 roughly. So I call up Marvin Goldsmith. I said, we want to come and see you about a building. He says, please come over. He's the one who put together the paperwork for the Rebbe about the swimming school. I tell him, this is what I want to do. I want to buy this building. It's only $2,250,000. He said, wait a second, where'd you get that number from? He takes out his pen and pencil. He says, no, it's $250,000. That's mazel tov. I said, what's the mazel tov about? I says, I just made $2 million staying in your house.
So we'll be right back after a short message, more with Friends of Chabad. Here we go, Friends of Chabad.
So now, we got to tie it up. Because you don't come to the Rebbe with a dream, you come with a piece of paper. So we meet with the people, pile them the Phi fraternity. Come to the Phi to meet with the lawyers. So I'm going with a wonderful man, Alan Lazaroff. He says, Rabbi, I can't afford to give you any money because I'm giving it all to Israel. Who's talking about money? We got to talk business with these people. You're a businessman. What do I know? We drive down. I meet him there. Park up my car. Now he says, look, you're coming here to negotiate for a building that they want $250,000 for. How much money do you have? I said, I have money? Whoever said I have money? He looks at me like this, because you know you're not going to give you no money. Let's go inside. So we come in, the lawyers are sitting there. I said, you want $250,000? Not a problem. I'll give you $250 a month. No interest till it's paid. They said, no way. We can't do that. What are you kidding? I said, I'll tell you what. I got to check with my Rebbe in New York. He's going to tell me what to do. But I'm willing, if you guys will accept it, to come up with $125,000 in 30 days. You come back to me and tell me. Meanwhile, Lazaroff is sitting in his chair like this. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. But he sees this negotiation going on. He never saw negotiations like this before. They come back. Okay, you got a deal. $125,000. $5,000 down to secure the deal. If the Rebbe says yes, that's a deal. Not that. So they say, okay, give us $5,000. I go like this. Alan, write him a check for $5,000, please. We get into the elevator. Smoke pouring out of his ears. I thought rabbis are not supposed to lie. I said, what are you talking about? Are you accusing me of being a liar? Shame on you. Okay, I'm not. Explain it to me. I asked you if you had money, you said you didn't have a dime. They asked you if you had money, you said you'll raise it in 30 days. Where did you get the money? Did you lie to me or did you lie to them? Where did you get it from? I said, from you. From you, Lazarus. You'll give it, you'll raise it. He thought it was so funny. Travel to the Rebbe, go into the Rebbe's room. 2 no's already, remember. Now, Chabad or Lubavitch had nothing on the college campus. Nothing. Walk into the Rebbe with this, Rebbe smiles and says, this Chabad house, it should be called Chabad house. It'll spread from the west to the north to the south, finally to the east, where we really need them. You'll call them all by the same name. You open up the telephone book and you look. You look for Chabad, and that's what you find. That's the story of the first Chabad house of the world. But you have to understand, since I was 11 years old, the Rebbe is my Rebbe. That's right, that's my Rebbe right here. Right next to my Rebbe is my Tzemach,
Yes.
who's right with the Rebbe now, upstairs. And both of them are downstairs here with us in this room.
They're working together.
Right. Not physically, but spiritually.
I wanted to say something about Tzemach. He touched both of us in his young life, me very deeply. I spent a lot of time with him when I was in Australia, Melbourne, Australia, and he would come by, and he would always come by out of the blue. He would never.
Just like his father.
Just like his father. Well, he was a sneaky you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like a volcano.
Yeah, he was a quiet you.
Going. He's like the underground volcano. He would show up out of nowhere. All of a sudden, Tzemach would be there, and he had that wonderful smile.
Yeah.
He never told you where he came from, what he was going, where he was going, why he showed up. Nothing. But then he would sit down and we would talk, and I would talk to him about Noah. Right? And he had that lovely way where time went away. Like you felt that when you were with him, there was no time. You could just spend hours here. I wanted to be more like him. I was thinking, he was telling me about Noah. I wasn't listening. I was saying, look at the way he does this. Look at just the gentle approach that he has, the way he goes around this and that. And with my friend Stephen, Tzemach would give him tefillin. And Stephen was not in the habit of that, and he almost
Who cares about habits?
He wasn't yet. Now he's.
By the way, I only do tefillin with the cunins. Okay, but there's enough cunins I can get a lot of tefillin done.
Yeah. He can't go anywhere.
Wait till we send the grandchildren after you.
Anyway, so we were both deeply moved by him.
And that's why I'm so proud of the beautiful book of the Haftorahs.
Yes.
The stories of the prophets. The Rebbe's way of explaining, to make it so a simple person can open up the book and understand the great depth of the Rebbe's teachings about the prophets and their message to us. And the Rebbe's translation of the Bible, all the Rebbe's thoughts on the Bible, is just incredible. The daily wisdom thoughts.
Yeah.
A thought for the day to make it through the difficult hours of the day. We study they are difficult. We love the Rebbe. Because he holds us like a father holding a baby. In a time of great trouble, it's comfort. In a time of great happiness, it's happiness. In a time of great sorrow, right? Loss of a son, Tzemach Yeshua Kunin, 43 years old, who built this beautiful building here. Always with us. Sending us a message. Hey, calm down. You don't run the world. God runs the world. And he knows what he's doing. Let him run the world his way.
How inspirational was that? We're going to see you again next week. Welcome to the Friends of Chabad. There are 5,000 of them around the world, and we're making it a personal mission to be in touch with each and every one. We're going to do episodes that are going to have rabbis, rebbitzins, dancing, mysticism, Kabbalah, family talk, foods, everything you can think of. Another inspirational episode. Come with me. Okay, I'm going to be Ed McMahon. Here's Johnny.
You see, that's the kind of show you've allowed yourself to be part of today. We have the great honor to have the great emissary of the Rebbe to Los Angeles and California, and I'm blessed to have been a friend of his for now quite a long time.
Over 40 years.
Over 40 years. Over 40 years.
Do you remember when you first met him?
Oh, yes, I do.
What was that story? How did you first meet this character?
This is Rabbi Kunin, the Rabbi Kunin.
Well, I needed to put on this telethon. And they said, John Voight is an incredible guy. If you could only get John Voight. I said, why not? What's the problem? We're all God's creations. So what's the problem to get John Voight?
In your mind, it was done already.
Yeah, of course. So he shows up in my office, and we start talking, and he talks about, his family really needs some furniture, so on and so forth. What they really need is a couch. I said, a couch? That's what they need? Uh-huh. Could you get up for a second? You see this couch? Would that work for them? He said, yes, it would. I helped carry it to the elevator with him. Then you put it on your truck, right?
We were a pair of movers once together. That's what you're telling the story
But thank God we were 40 years younger. You imagine trying to do it today.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the first adventure we had.
That's correct. But you see, you have to understand one thing. Since I was 11 years old, the Rebbe is my Rebbe. And the Rebbe is my father, and still is today. Rebbe holds my hand today. Today. Many years after that first time I saw him when I was 11.
Did you see any miracles with the Rebbe?
Any miracles? I could tell a million miracles of the Rebbe. Million after a million after a million, I could tell you. And they're ongoing today. The miracles are ongoing miracles today, because the Rebbe is very much with us. Talk about miracles now. A few years ago, I get a call from my wife, and I was then going to do a telethon shoot.
Has John ever been on the telethon? Maybe we can get him on.
Are you kidding? John Voight is known basically because of the telethon.
That's right. I heard he learned how to dance because of the telethon.
That's true. Oh, boy, does he dance. We're going to dance on the telethon. Just dancing. Live to live. L'chaim. 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 To live. That's what's going to be.
How's it go, John? How's it go?
Right. That's what it is.
I never interrupt an artist when he's at work.
Right. So whatever the case is, out of a splitting headache, Tati, what's the usual answer you will do? You have a crew waiting to tape you giving out food to the homeless by the ocean in Simcha Monica. So right away, I made sure someone called the crew to say it's canceled. Come home to the house. And my mommy says, I have a splitting headache, Tati. Let's go to the emergency room. Since when do you do that? You say, take an ibuprofen, lie down, I'll stay here with you and see if you feel better. No, straight to the emergency room. I stormed into the emergency room, a lot of people there. I said, my wife needs your help right away. God forbid if you don't help her right away. Right away, I called up our son, Rabbi Mendel, Cunin, fireball the oldest of our 6 sons. Quick, Mendy, help me. Get a doctor. He pulled a bunch of buttons before we knew it. We're in. Right away. Doctor comes in so quickly. Let's go for a CAT scan. Goes for a CAT scan. She's having a stroke. Okay, I close my eyes. Rebbe, you're always with us. It's going to be okay. And then, the head of the department of neurosurgery comes down to see us. Says, I want to tell you something. I'm not even sure she's going to live through this surgery. He picks up his big hand. He says, you see this fist? That's how big the clot is. If she will survive, she is going to be a vegetable. I said, thank you so much for your analysis. But we have a God, and we have a Rebbe, the Moses of our generation. You'll see, doctor, everything's going to be okay. Meanwhile, family members I called, get the word out, started to come. I said, you know what we're going to do? First of all, I'm going to take a pair of tefillin and find someone to put on tefillin with. And I'm calmly walking around the surgery waiting room. Excuse me, sir, you look to be Jewish. Yes, I am. Come, let's put on tefillin. And so on and so forth. Giving away the 7 Noahide commandments. See what it says here? Lili Nishmas, for the merit of the great soul of Rabbi Tzemach Yeshua Kuhn. The tefillin, right? So, after walking around with my tefillin, I'll show you guys what this is. That's what it is. This is yarmulke you put on your head. Yira me'alakah. Now you have the part of the tefillin. It says here to love a fellow Jew. This goes on the arm, next to the heart, 7 times around, the 7 human emotions. This goes on the head, the internet connection of your mind to God. I'm running around with the tefillin. I do it all the time. And meanwhile, I said, you know what, let's start to dance. And me and more of the family came, and we're dancing and dancing and dancing and dancing and dancing. What are you dancing? You're Meshuggah. Meshuggah means that person lost his mind.
It's probably the one word that everybody knows also, Meshuggah. It's become very famous.
Very famous word. What are you dancing for? Then the doctor comes down like this, after hours of surgery. He says, Rabbi, you knew something we didn't know. We were able to get out the whole clot. The way it looks, there's been a lot of pressure on the brain. We don't know what that's going to mean. But she's going to make it through the surgery. You knew something that we did not know. You knew something that we did not know. I said, I told you before. We have a great God. We have a Rebbe. That's what it's all about.
Wow. Now, if that wasn't moving, we'll be right back with more Friends of Chabad. Welcome back to more Friends of Chabad.
And I go through miracle after miracle after miracle. I'm going now. Not something of the past. Now I'm going. Because the Rebbe is always with us. What is the Rebbe's message? Told you that ain't else was he can't bring a Mashiach. Each and every one of you do. Do what you could do. Not sit and cry. Oh, what's going to be? What are you going to do? Do what you could do to make the world a place of greater kindness.
Is it true there was a fire and that one of the few things that survived was a picture of the rabbi?
That's correct. In 1980, 40 years ago, my math is not that good, I'm at home. I live a few blocks away. I get a call, the phone is ringing. Pick up my phone. Rabbi, the building is burning. I said, run quickly, grab the Torah and run out. He says, you don't understand. I jumped out the window to save my life.
Oh, boy.
You don't understand. Make my way up the hill. Whole sky is red. Come there. Fire trucks all over. I couldn't even get in. I pulled over to the side. The building is burning. It's exploding. My tears came down my face. They said there's people trapped inside. Tears came down my face. Middle of the night, you can't call the Rebbe, but yes, you can. You call him like this, from your heart, from your mind. Save me, save me. First Chabad house in the world, how could that be? All of a sudden, the fire chief comes down, and this is the copy of that picture. Did you see the picture of the Rebbe? That's a copy. The fire chief, knowing there's dead people inside, walks out with his big portrait, scarred by the fire, but not burnt. Who is this man? Wow. Fire chief wants to know who the Rebbe is. I says to the Rebbe, why do you ask? He says, because in the room where this was, there was no reason this could have survived. I said, yeah, that's a Rebbe. I said, you've sent me a message already. In the wee hours of the morning, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And then, comes in the morning, I was able to call the Rebbe. A neighbor gave us a telephone line. I called the Rebbe. The Rebbe immediately sent $18,000, livners hanisrafes, to build what was destroyed by fire. And then, the Rebbe sends us a message, day after tragedy will be triumph. You have a God, you have a Rebbe, go forward. Now is not the time to sit and cry. What will your tears do? You can't put out fires with tears. You got to put out fires with power. So then I'm sitting one day in this mobile unit. He walks a big guy like this. Big guy. I was walking in. Are you the rabbi? I said, yes. This is a house of goodness and kindness. I want to help rebuild it. Here's a check. I said, thank you so much. He says, why don't you open up the envelope? Okay. Open up the envelope. $5,000. That's incredible. Why don't you see who signed it? Yeah, it says Carol O'Connor. He says, Carol O'Connor, that's me. I said, Rabbi Kunin, this is me. He says, maybe you know me as Archie Bunker. I said, maybe you know me as Shlomo. He started to laugh. He said, so you don't know who I am? I said, no. He says, here, let me give you my card, my personal number. Find someone that has a television set, because you don't. And have him call me on my private line. I want to help rebuild it. Within 30 days, we had a dinner across the street. 1,300 people came. 1,300 people. They said, what are we going to do next? I said, you know what we should do? We're going to do a telethon. He said, what are you going to do on a telethon? I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to dance. I'm going to dance. That's how the first telethon happened.
What year was that?
1980. September, after the fire that was at the end of May. That's how the telethon started.
I remember
and John Boyd came to dance. Right?
Years later, yeah.
Something else, John, huh?
Yeah, it was It was really something. I eventually came on in 1986 or 7 or something like that. And it was all very new to me. And I remember after the incident of the giving the people the couch, which I became somebody of size in your eyes when I did that. And anyway, so I came on the telethon and I said a few good words, like give to these people. They help people. You can't deny them. You give them a little something. Reach in your pockets and be generous. Whatever I said. And then they said, now, ta 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 ta, and there I am in front of the microphone, and I'm pulled, and all of a sudden I'm dancing with the rabbis, and it's you grabbing me with 2 iron arms, like this, and I started laughing. I was laughing the whole time I was dancing. Meanwhile, the other guys are floating around jumping, 3 or 4 feet in the air. I'm telling you, it was some experience. So I became a bit of a fixture on the telethon.
There's a lot more to come. Stay tuned. See you in a minute or two. Here we go. Friends of Chabad.
I'm going to tell a story because, and maybe you'll correct it if I'm off, but you had Jan Murray, who was this wonderful fellow who was a host, and apparently you saw him on television and said, get him to somebody, and somebody got him. And Jan Murray signed on, and eventually it was a long career he had.
I got to tell you something interesting. So what happened is, he comes to see me at the burnt out building. I take him in the building. I say, now let's put on tefillin. I don't do that. He says, you need me for the telethon. But I'm not going to put on tefillin. I said, let me tell you something. I need you to put on tefillin, more important than for the telethon. He says, you really mean that? If I tell you I'm going to put them on and I'm not going to come to the show? I said, I accept it. It's not a problem. I accept it. And he put on film. Many years later, when he was dying in the hospital, I came. I put on film with him again.
Wow.
And him and Carol O'Connor were the 2 original hosts of the television.
Right. Amazing. Yeah. And he told me this story, and you'll check it out. He said, I said, tell me how it got you into it. And because I was interested, we have to stick together, the guys that you pull off the street, you know what I mean? So there we were talking. He says, when I first went on the telethon, I think it was the first telethon, and Jan said, we were an hour away from going up. I was a little nervous. I didn't know what I was doing with these people. I didn't really understand what I was called on to do here. I was doing the best I could. There was so much disorganization. I couldn't believe it. He said, and I'm used to having a slick rehearsal, this and that. He said, no, it wasn't, again, none of that. And all of a sudden, within an hour of the show going up, the lights came down. There was no power. So there's no power. A couple of people found candles, and there was no show. And he said, I'm walking around in the dark. He said, and I come across, I see, and by a flickering light, there I see Rabbi Kunin, my mentor of this thing, in the corner. And he's talking to God, John, he says to me. He says, God, look, we've been through a lot of difficulties. We've done what we've been asked to do. We've done everything for the Rebbe that he's instructed. And it's like that. He said, I didn't know what's going on here. So I moved through. I'm not a very religious man. He said, I made about 3 trips. Finally, somebody's saying, well, it's down to the last 20 seconds, fellas. It looks like it's going to be over. And I'm passing the rabbi, and it's coming down, and he's saying, God, I tell you, I've done everything I possibly could. I did this, I made the calls here and there. I can't find any way to turn this on. If this is going to go on, if somebody's going 5, 4, 3.
Wow.
It's gonna.
Scene from a movie.
Yeah, it's going to be up to you. The lights come on.
Amazing.
And somebody grabs. This is the experience of the telethon. I do a lot of this, you know what I mean? But that's what it was like. They pushed Jan Murray out into the light, and he says, "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first Chabad telethon." And he said, "That's how it began." And he said, and you're nodding, so it's the truth. Holy smokes!
Yeah.
But that's the way it was. But anyway, it was a little bit like that experience every time I went on the telethon.
I want to tell you something interesting. We got a studio donated. I think it was a few years later. We reached out to Bob Dylan.
Oh yeah, right.
Reached out to Bob Dylan to come on the show. He's going to come when he can. So I tell people in the security, we're expecting Bob Dylan to come. And make sure you let him in as soon as he comes. All of a sudden, a few hours later in the middle of the show, someone comes over to me and says, somebody, I'm a sugar with a big dog standing by security, and he says he's Bob Dylan. What should we do, call the police? I says, no, let him in.
And give plenty of money to Chabad. It's my favorite organization in the whole world, really. They do nothing but good things with all the money, and the more you can give, the more it's going to help everybody.
That was Bob Dylan. That's how he came on our show. It goes on and on and on. It goes on and on and on. And the Rebbe always is featured in our show. You always see the presence of the Rebbe there. And you could feel it. It's palpable. You could feel it as we go on with the show. And there's great blessings that come from this. Because our Rebbe teaches us positivity. I don't know if there's such a word or it isn't. If not, I coined it. Positivity. You have to be positive people. Tracht gut. Think good. Es wird sein gut, and it will be good. So instead of sitting in your house and crying, you say, to life, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim, to life.
L'chaim to life.
That's it.
L'chaim to life. L'chaim to life. L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim to life.
More to come. We'll see you next week.